full house. Can everybody hear me back there? You all hear me? Because I know we've got more folks still coming in, but let's go ahead and begin. First of all, welcome, and thank you all for participating in tonight's comment section. My name is Pam Avery, and I'll be facilitating the meeting tonight. I'm a neutral facilitator, which means I'm not an employee of the EPA, nor am I affiliated with any individual or group that will be presenting at tonight's meeting or participating. I know we have some public officials present. Would each of you like to just stand and briefly introduce yourself? Anyone here?
Gary Trimmer, Councilman, City of Bridgeton.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mark Mathieson, State Representative.
Anyone else that's here? Okay, yes, sir.
Mike Bowler, Mayor of Maryland Heights.
Yes, sir.
Board of Education, Parkway School District.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Board of Education, Parkway School District.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Maryland Heights.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
Amy Falker, City of St.
Thank you.
Councilman Jones from the City of Thornton, and also a committee man of Lewis and Clark Township.
Thank you.
I'm Mary Ann Solari. I'm the committee woman of Airport Township Democratic Party.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm running for state representative of this area.
Pardon me? Okay, okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I think we've got everybody. That's very good. I know many of you are familiar with this hall, but just a very few housekeeping items. The restrooms are on either side of the door there, and the door to my left. There is a drinking fountain. It's in the front of the entrance. In the unlikely case of an emergency, I mean, I think you can look around and see a lot of emergency exits, including one behind me. So that everyone can hear the presentation and speakers, please take a moment to silence your cell phones. Thank you. Okay, this meeting was called to hear your comments on the proposed EPA plan to amend the record of decision for operable Unit 1 of the Westlake Landfill Superfund site here in Bridgeton. A full description of the EPA's preferred action for the site, as well as other options considered, is in the plan, which is available online. And also, I hope each of you picked up one of these flyers here because it has the public comment information on it, including the website address. We will be repeating the website and mailing information throughout the meeting. In addition to speaking tonight, you can also submit your comments to the EPA through April 23rd. That's been extended 30 days, so keep in mind April 23rd for the public comment period. We also have a few computers out in the main hallway if anybody feels that they would like to make their comment tonight, and there's be some staffers there to help you with that. Okay, so before I turn the podium over to Jim Gulliver, I'd like to go over tonight's agenda. Following a few introductory remarks from Jim and Kel Kelly, who is here with us, Mary and Tom will provide a brief overview of the options considered for the Westlake Landfill site and also describe the EPA's preferred action. After this presentation, we will proceed immediately to the public comment session. If you'd like to share a comment but have not yet registered to do so, well, I believe they're still taking some comments there, although from what I understand, we have quite a few folks that will want to be commenting tonight. And again, those of you who are commenting, we're going to ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes. That's so that we can hear from everyone who, well, as many people I should say as possible, who wish to comment. in this hall. So let me turn this over to Jim and to make a few introductions, and we'll get moving.
Very good. Thank you, Pam. Again, my name is Jim Belford. I'm the Regional Administrator for EPA Region 7 in Kansas City. I want to thank you all for turning out on a pretty blustery night to provide your input into the process as we deliberate and as we consider the remedy that will be used to address the issue of, again, the Westlake landfill. I want you to know that the Westlake landfill is the top priority for Region 7 EPA. And as Regional Administrator, I want you to know that myself and every member of my staff are committed to delivering a permanent remedy that will fully protect this community. As I said, we're here tonight to take your comments on the remedy that was recently proposed, and let me assure you that we are determined to consider your input as an essential part of the effort again to protect the community. I want to introduce to you DeAndre Singletary. DeAndre, from the stand. DeAndre is our team leader for this project. He's also director of the Region 7 Enforcement Coordination Office. He and I will be alternating, listening to your comments and hearing again what you bring to the table. It's now my pleasure to introduce Albert Kelly. And Kelly is a senior advisor to U.S. EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt. Upon taking office, Administrator Pruitt announced that the cornerstone of his tenure would be to ensure that the Superfund Program and EPA's land and water cleanup programs operate effectively and efficiently. In May of 2017, Administrator Pruitt established a Superfund task force and appointed Kell as the chair to that task force. The goals of the Superfund task force were to provide recommendations on an expedited time frame on how to move EPA forward to restructure the Superfund cleanup process. The goal was to realign incentives for all involved, to promote expeditious solutions and remediation, to reduce the burden on cooperating parties, to establish incentives for parties to remediate sites, and encourage private investment in cleanups and sites as well. And finally, to promote the revitalization of properties across this country. Prior to joining EPA, Kell worked in the banking industry. He's also served as an assistant district attorney in Oklahoma's Creek and Okfuskee counties, and was a partner in the law firm McMillan, Vassar, and Kelly. Please join me in welcoming Kell Kelly.
Thank you, Jim. I just wanted to, my gosh, we've got a lot of people here. Thank you all for coming out. I spend a lot of my time in Washington, and the thing that I would tell you that's different about Washington and here is here you applauded for all the politicians. I thought that was pretty good. Nobody gets applauded in Washington at all. I want to bring you greetings from Administrator Pruitt. As many of you know, Administrator Pruitt made the Westlake landfill a top priority relative to his administration. He's talked about it on numerous interviews. He's talked about it with the president, and he is serious about getting it cleaned up. A couple things that occurred relative to our task force. One was the administrator established a list of special emphasis projects or special emphasis sites. One of those special emphasis sites out of 21 sites of the 1,344 sites that we have today in this country, one of the 21 was at Westlake. The purpose of that list is to say he wants everyone to know that those 21 sites today are the ones that are getting his emphasis. Doesn't mean the rest of the sites aren't getting emphasis, but these are getting his. And in particular, Westlake has gotten a lot of his emphasis. He has charged all of us with getting to a solution, and to show you that he's not standing behind anyone else, but standing out there in front, he retained authority to approve all remedies above $50 million in cost. Well, obviously, this one is above $50 million in cost, and so it falls squarely on him. Tonight, you're going to get to hear I think, a very informational presentation. It will not be the dominant feature of the evening, although we have Tom Mailer here, who I think is perhaps the best nuclear scientist I've ever met, and he has spent literally hundreds and hundreds of hours on the remediation for this site. The most important thing we're going to hear tonight, and I'm going to be sitting over here by Jim taking notes, is your views. I was here a few months ago and I listened to 44 presentations from some of you who were here that night who talked about the devastation that the uranium that has been put through, around, and in your community has caused you. And I'm sorry about that. I truly am sorry about that. That should not happen to anyone. Administrator Pruitt's been in office a year. What we've committed to you months ago was to get this to a solution, and not just a Band-Aid solution, but one that we would stand behind. Now I know, excuse me, we call this Excavation Plus, and we believe very strongly that it is the right solution. But we want to hear your comments, and as Pam said, one of the things that's very important is that whether you talk tonight or don't talk tonight, that you either go online or sit down and write a note and submit it to the region before April 23rd. We will respond to all of those comments, and those comments will be summarized and delivered to the administrator, because he has said, I don't care how long, Mary, you have the comment period running, I want to have a solution by the end of August, 1st of September, that I can sign a permanent rod on, a permanent record of decision. So, man.
End of September?
Yeah, I said end of August.
That's great.
As you will note, whenever we get a comment, it goes to the record. It's very transparent. If we met with any of the responsible parties, that record, that meeting record would go, that meeting minute would go in the record. You see we have a court reporter up here, very fine court reporter. He's going to take all the notes tonight. That will then be put into the record. So it'll be transcribed in the record. You can go read it online anytime once it gets transcribed. All the comments that have been made, you'll be able to see. And so this is an important thing. We believe, and the Administrator Pruitt believes, that he made the proper decision. That doesn't mean everybody here agrees with it, but he made a proper decision. The thing that I have said is, I think the important thing here is, he has made a decision. The decision itself moves this ahead. And we will have this completed because we believe that the responsible parties are going to be responsible. We believe they will step up and pay this. We do not anticipate that we're going to fight them, but we will fight them if we have to. But he has said on all sides, I expect responsible parties to be responsible. Now there are more or less three responsible parties, as I've talked with Ms. Drott. Department of Energy has a portion of this. Public Services has a part of this, as does a company called Exxon. So it's up to them to figure out how they divide that. Generally speaking, that probably divides a third, and whatever the cost is. But that's between them. What our mission is to get it cleaned up and to get it cleaned up well. So we're anxious to hear your comments. Karen has already told me that she's gonna blister me a little bit, so I'm getting ready for that, Karen. But I do feel like in the times that I've been here, I feel like I've made some friends. I feel like we've at least gotten to talk to each other. And whether we always agree or not matters not. What matters is the EPA works for you. Believe it or not, the agencies of the federal government are supposed to work for you. I am, Administrator Pruitt is, and others. So the mission that we have is to fulfill as best we can our duty to you all. And that's what we've tried to do here. So with that, I just want to tell you, I'll be here as long as until they throw us out. If there are other things that you want to talk to me about, you call me on the phone, I'll try and return your call. I'll see to it that information is taken to the administrator if you'd like that information taken there. But in closing, I would just say from him, he takes this extremely seriously. He believes very much that this solution is a protective and good solution that launches this, gets this passed, and gets it done in a rather expeditious manner compared to what could be decades and years it has been up to this point in time. So we want to hear your comments. It's at this point in time that I want to introduce the head of Region 7's Superfund. She's the director of our Superfund Program. She does a very fine job. She's an engineer by training, and she is going to, she and Tom Mayer, our nuclear scientist, will be making our presentation prior to your comments. So please welcome Mary Peterson.
you all for being here this evening. Like Cal said, my name is Mary Peterson, and I'm the director of the Superfund Program at EPA Region 7. I'm going to spend just a few minutes with you talking about the Superfund law and the process that we use to get our sites through the Superfund process. And then Tom Naylor, as Cal said, our nuclear engineer, will present to you the more technical portion of the presentation tonight. So for those of you that may not be that familiar with our Superfund law, the Superfund law was enacted in 1980 to address the nation's most contaminated sites. And the Superfund law provides EPA broad authorities to respond to releases of hazardous substances into the environment. Those authorities include EPA having the ability to conduct investigations and cleanup actions at sites. The law also provides EPA the authority to issue orders to potentially responsible parties, basically to parties who have liability under the Superfund law, to either pay for or to conduct site investigations and cleanup actions. Now, EPA implements the Superfund law under our guiding regulation, which is called the National Contingency Plan, or the NCP. You might hear that a lot. The NCP lays out the process that EPA uses to move a site from its discovery through cleanup and beyond. Some of the steps in the process include things like site investigations, remedy selection, the cleanup, design and construction, and long-term maintenance. The NCP also provides us a set of criteria that we use for remedy selection. And we use these criteria to evaluate different cleanup options against one another. And you're going to hear Tom talk a little bit about that as it relates to the Westlake landfill site. Now, chief among these criteria is the overall protection of human health and the environment. It is our primary job to select remedies that protect human health and the environment, not just for today, but over the long term. The NCP also contains provisions for public involvement, much like we're doing tonight. Those requirements include mandatory public comment sessions at certain phases or stages in the Superfund process. They also provide a lot of other, not just requirements, but opportunities for public engagement. Really, when the NCP was crafted, the idea was that the public would be engaged, as you are this evening. So EPA conducts a lot of community engagement activities. We support community advisory groups, which, as you know, there is an active community advisory group chaired now by Harvey Bergman. EPA supports that community advisory group. We attend meetings upon their invitation. EPA often holds their own availability sessions to try to get information to the public. We issue fact sheets. If you're not on our mailing list, you certainly have that opportunity by visiting the table up front. You can receive information about the site directly through your home email. So we try to use various mechanisms to provide information to the public. And as a former Superfund project manager myself, I can tell you that the most successful sites with the best outcomes are those that have an engaged community. So I really want to just thank you for being an engaged community and for being here tonight. Next slide. Thank you. So this graphic brings us and shows you where we are in the Superfund remedy selection process for the Westlake landfill site. While it has taken us several years to get to this point, we're very pleased to be here. We're pleased to be here with you tonight, presenting our proposed plan and to hear from you. Following the close of the public comment period, we will work as fast as possible to complete that remedy selection process and get the signed record of decision amendment in place. After the ROD amendment is signed by Administrator Pruitt, EPA will then enter into negotiations with the potentially responsible parties to pursue a legally enforceable agreement under which they will conduct the next phase, which includes engineering design and the construction phase of the remedy. Now, at this time, I'm going to turn the podium over to Tom Naylor for the more technical presentation. Many of you know Tom, as he's been in the community over the last several years, either overseeing site work, conducting sampling off-site, or just communicating with you through some of our public meetings and the CAG meetings. So with a master's degree in nuclear engineering, Tom provides some really valuable and relevant knowledge to this project. So we please welcome Tom Naylor.
Thank you, Mary. I'm going to spend just a few minutes tonight going over some background information for the site, discussing the alternatives that EPA evaluated and the preferred alternative that we presented in the proposed plan. More information can be found in the remedial investigation report.
So I'm going to try closer to the mic.
Sorry, is that better? Okay, apologize for that. More information can be found in the remedial investigation report and the final feasibility study, which are on EPA's Westlake Landfill website and also in our administrative record. So the Westlake Landfill complex, as obviously all of you know here, is located in Bridgeton, Missouri. It's between the St. Louis Airport on the east and the Earth City Industrial Complex to the west. It's also about 1.5 miles east of the Missouri River. The 200-acre site consists of multiple landfill cells, a leachate treatment facility, an asphalt plant, the buffer zone, and the adjacent Crossroad Industrial Park property, otherwise known as Lot 2A2. The land at the site has been divided into 2 operable units. A separate operable unit has been established for groundwater. Operable Unit 1, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, consists of the areas at the site that contain radioactively impacted material, or RIM. This includes Area 1, Area 2, the buffer zone, and Lot 2A2 of the Crossroads property. The RIM consists of residual radioactive materials generated from the processing of uranium for the Manhattan Project that was brought to the site in 1973 and used as fill for landfill operations. EPA has defined RIM as materials that contain elevated radium, thorium, and uranium isotopes. So we're going to look over the next couple of slides at a couple of videos that show where in Area 1, in Area 2, in 3 dimensions, RIM is estimated to be. These videos will also show the non-RIM waste that would need to be excavated to access all the RIM. And we'll have more detailed videos, longer versions of these videos available on the EPA website very soon. As the video begins, you will see an aerial overview of the southern portion of the Westlake Landfill complex, including Bridgeton Landfill and Area 1, which is surrounded by a purple boundary. As the aerial image fades, you will see several green blocks, which represent, based on all the data collected from the site, where RIM is located. The vertical bars represent places in the landfill that were drilled to sample for RIM. RIM has been identified in Area 1 near the surface and as deep as about 90 feet below the surface. The beige and purple blocks that you see now represent the non-RIM waste material that would need to be excavated in order to access all of the RIM. Because a portion of Bridgeton Landfill lies on top of the southern part of Area 1, these materials would include a large amount of newer waste from the North Quarry portion of the Bridgeton Landfill. The Area 2 video again begins with an aerial overview. Area 2 is surrounded by a purple boundary. Once again, the green blocks represent where RIM is in Area 2 based on all the data that has been collected from the site. The vertical bars again represent the locations in the landfill that were drilled to sample for RIM. The majority of the RIM is present in Area 2 at the site. RIM has been identified at the surface and as deep as about 40 feet below the ground surface, and screening indicates rim may be as deep as about 50 feet below the ground surface in a couple of locations. Again, the beige and purple blocks represent the non-rim waste materials that would need to be excavated to access all of the rim. This would include some waste in the adjacent demolition and sanitary landfills, which are part of Operable Unit 2. So EPA has evaluated 8 alternatives to remediate the site. In the next several slides, we're going to go over some of the details surrounding each one of those alternatives. So the no action alternative is required for all feasibility studies to evaluate the risk posed by the contaminants at the site if no action is taken. Evaluations presented in the updated baseline risk assessment demonstrate that exposures from the site will result in risks above levels of health concern in the future. This evaluation also serves as a baseline for evaluation of the other alternatives. As some of you may know, EPA issued a record of decision in 2008 that would leave all the rim in place at the site and required an engineered cover to be installed to address the rim. Alternative 2 requires construction of an engineered cover similar to the 2008 drawing over both Area 1 and Area 2 that is designed to meet the standards specified in the Uranium, Mine Tailings, and Radiation Control Act, or UNTRICA. These standards include preventing direct contact with the radioactive material, limiting radon releases, and protection of groundwater. This alternative is estimated to cost about $71 million and will take about 2.8 years to complete. So alternative 3 would also leave all the rim in place and requires installation of an engineered cover to address the rim at the site. The engineered cover will also be designed to meet the standards specified in UNTRICA, and this cap also requires a low permeability layer that is 100 times less permeable than alternative 2. Alternative 3 is estimated to cost about $90 million and it will also take about 2.8 years to complete. So alternative 4 is EPA's preferred alternative. And it will result in the removal of 67% of the contaminant radioactivity at the site. And I'm going to go over some more details about the preferred alternative later on in the presentation. The figure on the slide, the yellow areas depict the aerial extent of the excavation that would be required for this alternative in Area 1 and Area 2. Alternative 4 requires excavation and off-site disposal of rim at concentrations greater than 52.9 picocuries per gram, down to a maximum depth of 16 feet below the ground surface. So this will result in a variable depth excavation across Area 1 and Area 2, dependent upon where rim is located at concentrations that exceed 52.9, but would not go below 16 feet. After excavation, the site will be backfilled, graded, and the engineered cover that we just talked about in alternative 3 would be installed to address the remaining rim. This alternative is estimated to cost about $236 million and will take about 5 years to complete. So again, the figure here, the yellow areas on those maps depict the aerial extent of the excavation for this alternative. So alternative 5 requires excavation of rim at concentrations greater than 1,000 picocuries per gram, regardless of depth, followed by off-site disposal. This alternative removes approximately 63% of the contaminant radioactivity at the site. Alternative 5 would remove all the rim that exceeds what is typical for high-activity uranium mill tailing sites, which is typically 300 to 1,000 picocuries per gram. After excavation, the Again, the site will be backfilled, graded, and an engineered cover, the engineered cover described in alternative 3 will be installed to address the remaining rim. This alternative is estimated to cost about $287 million and will take approximately 8.3 years to complete. So alternative 6 requires removal of all rim down to a depth that would prevent unacceptable risks to a future on-site worker if an engineered cover were not installed. And then that rim would be disposed of off-site. This depth has been determined to be about 2.2 feet below the ground surface. After excavation, the site again will be backfilled, graded, and the same engineered cover from alternative 3 will be installed to address the remaining rim. This alternative is estimated to cost about $165 million and will take approximately 4.1 years to complete. So again, the yellow area on this figure, the maps represent the aerial extent of the excavation for this alternative. And alternative 7 requires excavation of all the rim present in Area 1 and Area 2, followed by off-site disposal. After excavation, again, the site will be backfilled, graded, and an engineered cover appropriate for municipal solid wastes will be installed on Area 1 and Area 2. Alternative 7 is estimated to cost about $455 million and will take approximately 14.6 years to complete. So alternative 8 also requires excavation of all the rim present at the site. After excavation, the site will be backfilled, graded, and the same engineered cover that we talked about for alternative 7 would be installed on Area 1 and Area 2. This time, the excavated rim will then be disposed in an on-site engineered disposal cell that includes both a liner and a cover. Now, there are multiple locations on site that may be viable for the construction of an engineered disposal cell. Alternative 8 has been evaluated with consideration of the disposal cell location in the southwest portion of the site, otherwise known as the soil borrow or stockpile area. I know this map may be hard to read in the back, but basically it's the purple five-sided shape on the bottom right. This alternative is estimated to cost $391 million and will take approximately 14.8 years to complete. So as Mary mentioned earlier, there are specific criteria established in the NCP that describe how EPA should evaluate cleanup of Superfund sites. It is EPA's position that alternative 4 represents the best balance of these criteria, specifically long-term effectiveness, short-term effectiveness, implementability, and cost in comparison to the other alternatives. In the next few slides, we're going to talk some more about EPA's considerations in our evaluation of alternative 4. So as we discussed earlier, this alternative requires excavation of rim at concentrations greater than 52.9 picocuries per gram, down to a maximum depth of 16 feet below the surface. The concentration criteria for alternative 4 stems from UNTRICA that we discussed earlier, which establishes a standard for cleanup of sites contaminated with mill tailings. The UNTRICA cleanup standard is conservatively based on a scenario where a house is built on land that is contaminated with uranium tailings, and protecting those individuals from inhaling radon or being exposed to gamma radiation from the site if they were to live in those houses. Since we don't expect to have homes built in the Westlake landfill, this is just one of the reasons that EPA evaluated a cleanup number that is 10 times higher than the standard established in UNTRICA. The excavated rim that exceeds the concentration threshold will be sent to an off-site disposal facility. After excavation, a low permeability cover, like we discussed for alternative 3, designed to comply with EPA's UNTRIPA regulations and EPA's guidance for hazardous waste landfill covers, will be installed in Area 1 and Area 2. So alternative 4 will result in a removal of the majority of the radioactivity from the radium, thorium, and uranium contamination present at the site. As thorium decays at the site to radium, the concentrations of radium will increase for approximately 9,000 years. The maximum concentrations of radium after this 9,000 year mark were used to evaluate future risks after implementation of the preferred alternative. And these details are discussed in the feasibility study. Excavation of a majority of the radioactivity in combination with installation and maintenance of an engineered cover will prevent unacceptable risks in the future. After excavation, the installation of a low permeability cover over Area 1 and Area 2 will minimize infiltration of rainwater and potential subsequent leaching of residual radioactive materials to groundwater. Alternative 4 does not require excavation of newer wastes, nor does it impact infrastructure in the Bridgeton landfill. This limits the potential for a subsurface heating event or landfill fire during remedy construction. This also limits the potential for odor. By limiting the depth of the excavation to 16 feet, EPA's preferred alternative limits the impacts to the community from fugitive dust and construction traffic, and takes 3 to 9 years less to complete compared to the deeper excavation alternatives. As a reminder, alternative 4 will take approximately 5 years to complete. Now to what we're here for tonight. So EPA is seeking comments on all the alternatives evaluated in the final feasibility study that we just discussed. More specifically, EPA is soliciting your comments on the 16-foot depth and the 52.9 picocurie per gram concentration criteria established as a baseline for alternative 4. EPA is also soliciting your comments on the selection of different depth and concentration criteria between Area 1 and Area 2, and whether to dispose of the RIN on-site or off-site. And with that, I will turn the microphone back over to Nick.
Okay, just real briefly, we'll wrap this up. This concludes our technical presentation for the evening, and we will now move into the public comment session. If you do not wish to provide your comments tonight verbally, you may submit them by email or through the form on the website or through regular mail delivery. There are also some comment cards available at the registration desk if you would like to comment that way. But I do remind you comments are due by midnight Central Standard Time on April 23rd. So thank you for your attention this evening and for being here tonight mostly. And I'm going to turn the meeting over to Pam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Before we actually begin the most important part of this evening, do have a quick announcement here. Apparently, a few cars that are parked here legally, and I've been told that they will be towed. So you have a Nissan Versa 406 N3M, I believe is the Claire, yeah. Sorry about that.
Kaplan?
Okay.
A Nissan Versa?
Yep. And then we had okay. A few more here. GM Sierra, Michael Kelby, 03ENOH, the temporary tag, and a Toyota Highlander, SG6, looks like you, either I or 1J, and Catherine and Martin. So if you're here, and I'm assuming you are, please do move your car so they don't get towed. Okay, well, as I mentioned, this is the most important part. And let me tell you just a bit how this is going to work. First off, this is our staging area. I'm sorry, folks. Actually, we're going to be having folks come up here so that we can get as many people as possible. I've got a chair here, I'm not using it, so if you want to use that chair. There's also a couple of chairs here, but we're going to need these so that we can get what we through. Oh, you want to? Okay, but are you in the, perfect, are you? Oh, fantastic, all right. Okay, we got our first two up here. Okay, so please take a look at the screen and you see your name right there. Please come up there. If you won the lottery here or something. Please either come sit down here. What we're going to be doing next is, as this scrolls, we're going to have the 8 of you come to this aisle here. And Chris is back there, and she's going to kind of escort you, or she'll be waving. Chris, want to wave? Mostly so we get as many people as possible. I understand we have more than 70 now who do want to speak today. And that does bring up, again, some of our ground rules here, and that is, if you can please hold your comments to about 2 minutes. I will be waving this at this little lovely green, I'm sorry, it's not red, but it's a green flag at the 90-second mark. And when you see that, you know we've got 30 seconds left. Please be respectful of, it looks like we're all a great group here, and a bunch of neighbors and everything. But everybody who wants to speak, we want to make sure that they can. Again, those of you, if we simply run out of time, and we do have a time when we have to get out of this hall, unless we're going to get kicked out like some of those cars, please make sure that you do go onto the comment section on that website there. Okay, so let's begin. Okay.
I assume when I say my name and address,
yes.
it's not.
Well, it will be recorded. Your name and address will be recorded. If not, the 2 minutes. Okay, you got a couple of seconds on it. Okay, please do state your name. Before. Thank you.
Is the mic on?
No.
There we go. Is the mic on?
There we go. Whoa. Okay. I'm Harvey Ferdman. I live in Chesterfield, Missouri. And I'm also chair of the Westlake Landfill CAG. First, I want to thank the EPA for being here tonight. This is a very important situation to our community, and I appreciate you guys expediting and taking action here. My comments tonight are my own. The CAG will be submitting a set of comments after our public meeting on Monday, April 9th, that will be held here in this hall at 6:30 p.m. Everyone here, please attend Monday, April 9th, 6:30 p.m. here. That will be a community meeting without the EPA, and we're free to talk about anything we want. The known rim appears to be deposited in 3 distinct areas, areas 1, 2, and under the muffin top, each with its own distinct profile and technical challenges to remediate. The muffin top represents both the greatest challenge and greatest long-term risk to our community. Since the rim in the non-muffin top portion of Area 1 and the rim in most of Area 2 appears to be easily accessed, I would prefer to see remedy number 7 applied to these areas. Since the known rim under the muffin top is co-located in materials that have experienced 2 previous landfill fires, and EPA documents state that all alternatives would be achievable and safe, I would also like to see alternative 7 applied to these deposits as well. I don't see how alternative 4 is protective of future or current landfill fires meeting the rim. A partial removal is a partial solution. We did not bring this onto ourselves. We did not dump the radioactive waste here. Our city, county, and state deserve a full solution. We deserve alternative 7.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stuart Briggs. I'm the mayor here of the city of Richmond. I'd like to welcome everybody here, but also offer a word of caution. We've been putting up with this for 45 years. It's time to quit kicking the can down the road and do something about it. Whether it's Harvey's idea or your preferred item number 4, One of the concerns, we don't want the material left here. It's got to go off-site. Whatever's excavated should not be kept on-site to be stored. If you don't choose item 7 or alternative 7 and you're going to leave 30% of that material, we're still going to live with 30% of it. What also happens though is you start to excavate and if you find more, like if you're going down 16 feet, you all of a sudden hit a hot spot and it's another 2 feet. What are you going to do with that? It needs to be going. That's the deal. What about the testing too on the soil that comes in for the cap? That's an issue that I've raised before with them when we met with the EPA and the regional administrator. Make sure that whatever you bring back in is tested to make sure we're not bringing in more contaminated material back into the country. We've also had concerns throughout this period about what happens to the groundwater. If you're putting on a cap that is rock or dirt or whatever the case might be and it's not impermeable, it means the water is going to circulate through. Should there not be some type of system of collection of that rainwater to make sure it doesn't go off-site and into the water systems that serve not just the city of Bridgeton, we're talking the entire region here, because it's a regional problem. Everything is. The other issue that I'd like to raise, and I believe you'll address it, is what assurances do the city of Bridgeton and the region have that the responsible parties will continue making payments to ensure the monitoring continues on this program? I heard where this material will stay active for 9,000 years. That'll be way beyond my life period. But what about future generations? We need to ensure that those responsible parties continue to pay their share of the cost. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm State Representative Mark Matisse in District 70. First, I want to say thank you for being here tonight. I've been very impressed with the transparency that you brought, your willingness to meet in person, your willingness to come here and listen to our thoughts, our concerns. Current proposal, which calls for excavation only to 16 feet. All right, that's a good start. I need your assurance. When you hit 16 feet, you test. You dig deeper if you find anything more that you can get. You keep digging deeper until you get everything you can get. In addition, based on my conversations with the Department of Natural Resources, the water table, the groundwater table changes based on the depth of the Missouri River as flooding comes through the area. The material, if it's left behind, will be the deepest material closest to the groundwater. We need to know that at the groundwater levels, at the highest point of the crest of that river, cannot reach any material that could be left behind. I don't want material left behind, but if there is, it cannot meet the water. Second, the entire proposal is based on what's inside the fence line. But it's been there for 45 years. We need you to look outside the fence line. Is to do a full grid headlight test within a 1 mile radius outside the fence line of soil samples and if possible dust samples within homes to ensure that none of the homes in Spanish Village, in the mobile home park, the Terrace Mobile Home Park, or the homes down Tosic Road are contaminated with waste that's been permeating our area forever. In my last 5 seconds, we want the material out of our town. It's been here long enough. Please, get it out of here. Thank you very much for having this part.
My name is Kate Rye from University City. I've been studying this is awfully high. You don't want to tell.
Give her more time. Give her more time.
Is that okay? Okay.
She gets 5 extra seconds.
I've been studying and speaking about the dangers of nuclear power and radioactive waste for more than 40 years. This is kind of funny. The oldest radioactive waste of the atomic age originated here in St. Louis, downtown, starting in the 1940s when Mellon Chemical Works began processing uranium for our nation's first nuclear weapons. At that time, no place existed to isolate the resulting waste from the public for the thousands of years that they will remain radioactive. And as we all probably agree, there still is no safe, permanent place. After World War II, truckers began hauling and dumping the waste out here in North St. Louis County, where they have been contaminating our St. Louis communities and rivers ever since. Leaving these hazardous wastes in and along the floodplain of the Missouri River that we drink is not a solution. The proposal we are considering tonight to dig up the top layers of these wastes and put something like a baseball cap on top is simply not enough. The federal government creates nuclear weapons. The government has the moral and fiscal responsibility to clean up the nuclear weapons waste at Westlake Landfill. I think it's very important. I think I'll read it again. The federal government creates nuclear weapons. The federal government has the moral and fiscal responsibility to clean up the nuclear weapons waste at Westlake Landfill. In my final paragraph, St. Louisans need our town's virtually permanent radioactive nuclear weapons wastes dug up and moved to a safe place, away from the water we drink and away from the air we breathe. I prefer alternative 7. Thank you.
You taking notes? Good. My name is Dawn Chapman, the co-founder of Just Moms STL. 1,000+ people in this room tonight. Which one of you is an acceptable risk? Raise your hand if you feel like you're an acceptable risk, that it's okay for you to get cancer. Which one of you wants to be, they're talking about an unacceptable risk. Which one of you wants to get cancer? Which one? Nobody. Nobody. How many of you have been hurt by this waste in St. Louis? I don't care where it's at, or know somebody. Of the 1,000+ people in this room, does anybody here know anybody that's been hurt by this waste? That is why as much of this waste that can be removed needs to be removed. Now I understand there's this thing called the muffin top. Can we please find a new name for that? I know. We're going to brainstorm about that. And I understand. Got mound. And I understand that that is deep. But there is no reason why alternative 7 should not be used across all other areas of this site. There really isn't. I think that when we talk about alternatives at this site, it is very important that you understand we're raising our kids here. We are investing in our community. We are not trying to blight this community. We want this community to grow. And you're asking us to let this community grow and raise our kids in a community where you're not willing to go as deep as you can. Again, I get the amount. I totally get it. I understand. But the rest of the site deserves more than 16 feet. Last but not least, get my friends in Spanish Village the hell out of here. Let them start over. They don't want much, they just want out. That's it. Thank you very much. I'm Karen Nickel, co-founder of Just Moms STL. This will be no disrespect to Mr. Kelly and the President, EPA, Scott Pruitt, and those of you that are pushing so hard for cleanup and restitution in this area. For the last 5 years, my life has been put on hold in order to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to protect my children from a burning radioactive landfill that sits 1.8 miles from my home. I am the founder of the Westlake Landfill Facebook and co-founder of Just Moms STL. Combined, these two groups have over 30,000 followers now. In 5.5 years, I have built a foundation through social media that educates this community of the potential dangers lurking in our soil, air, and water from the Westlake Bridgeton landfill. This is something EPA Region 7 has failed to do in 28 years. Most of this education came through EPA's own documents. This community has been lied to, ignored, and laughed at by the employees of the very same agency that is supposed to protect us. EPA is the oversight agency of the Westlake Landfill Superfund site, but has failed at its attempts and sat back and did nothing, while a billion-dollar company organized and continued to spread lies and false information pertaining to the risk of human health from this site, patronizing us through community CAB meetings with smirks and grins to eye rolls and the famous quote from an EPA person that said, "I wouldn't have a problem living here, it's safe." Some of those same people are here tonight to tell us that the radioactive waste must be removed because it is a risk to this community. That risk isn't new. It's been a risk for over 40 years. I believe this community is owed a public apology from EPA Region 7 for the way this very sick and honest community has been treated. All of that said is the reason the following things must take place. There needs to be a relocation plan in place for those living 1 mile from the landfill, along with a comprehensive insurance plan for the purposes of tax bases. In regards to the 16-foot depth excavation, this waste must be fully removed in areas where it is safe to do so, such as Area 2, no exception. The other areas must see waste removed to the safest level possible to human risk. The waste also must be disposed off-site, as this location sits in and prone to many natural disasters. It sits in the middle of a heavily populated metropolitan area, and there is no reason to keep it here.
Well, you know it's a community crisis when they let Republicans talk at the Union Hall. Paul Berry, St. Louis County Executive candidate, and I want to tell the EPA that we're very proud of you guys being here. If we looked at where we were 5 years ago, the EPA was telling us to kick rocks. And after many administrations, regardless of party, they constantly ignored and stonewalled us. These ladies, the moms, stood up for us. Yeah, I see that you guys want to go with the suggestion 4. There's a problem with that you guys haven't considered your analysis. We sit on the New Madrid Fault. Do you realize that we can have an earthquake, and what system are they going to be able to put in place in the ground that's going to deal with the ground shifting 2-3 feet up and down? So let me give you a doomsday scenario. We get hit with a 9.6 earthquake. The ground shakes. Any 5th grader in science knows that this happens. You're going to have fissures going up, okay? You're going to have the dust going into the air. The biggest waterway in the entire United States is the Missouri River, which is 1.5 miles away, which ends up dumping into the Mississippi River, which, I mean, what are we going to do here? So the bottom line is this. 7 is what we, this community, wants. Raise your hand if you do not want 7. Everybody's not going to need to talk. And Republic, and Don Chapman, myself, and the others, pleaded with Republic to work with us. Because when you look at the contract, when Mockenroot started this under the Department of War, they agreed to deal with all property damage, health damage, and liability. That doesn't transfer whenever they decide to sell from corporation to corporation. One other thing, please. Consider the earthquake issue. I questioned a person in the same place 5 years ago, and after beating them up for 20 minutes, he says, "Paul, you're right in front of the people that were here." This is not safe. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you very much.
Jerry Brewer, Councilman, the City of Bridgeton. I appreciate this opportunity to address you folks. Just a couple of things. Many of the things that I had have already been covered pretty well by the first 6 speakers. I'll be brief. Number 1, we hammer on this 16-foot. Just because you're the governor agreement, I would hope that you would have enough flexibility to, if you reach 16 foot and it's still hot, to maybe just kind of keep going. That would be common sense in doing the right thing. And again, just because you're the government, that shouldn't make you immune from doing things like that. Number two, off-site removal of the material is the only thing that we have. I don't care whether it's feasible technically or whether psychologically, it's got to be gone. Number three, we need a water leachate collection system. As I understand, this may be addressed under the OU3 program or whatever, but if you look at Weldon Spring, which is right in our vicinity, part of that system out there includes an excellent water leachate collection system, and I think it's even more important here. And number four, as the mayor alluded to, we make sure that the parties responsible are tied into this agreement in perpetuity. They have to go. This is going to be an ongoing problem. We don't want to fight the same battle 50 years from now or whatever, if something should occur. Gentlemen, I think that we're not getting everything that we want here, but I think if we could polish this off and add a few things and get some assurances in here, I would term this a reasonable compromise. It's a stretch, but it's a start. So let's get this thing moving. We've waited long enough. Thank you.
We're going to be scrolling these when we get almost to the end. Please know that those of you who see the thing suddenly flashing, it doesn't mean people sitting here aren't going to get an opportunity to speak, but we really do want to have you. As we spoke, with the next 8 folks, please start moving towards this aisle here and sit in these chairs. It's the only way we're going to get as many people to comment. Okay, so if you see your name up there, move to that aisle, move to these chairs, doesn't matter where. Remember where you are on the list. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Alex Cohen, co-founder of Earth Defense Coalition. I hear the concern about the speedy cleanup, and I just want to show that what's equally as important as the speedy cleanup is getting this done and getting it done right the first time. The reason it's so important to get this done the first time is because unlike other Superfund sites in the nation, we have 2 viable, alive, profitable corporations that are on the hook, Exelon and Republic. They're billion-dollar corporations, and they can afford a full and safe cleanup, and they can certainly afford more than damage to kill. That is why it's crucial that this record of decision is option 7, because it is the most protective, and it is getting all of the waste out of this landfill complex. If waste is left there, this will have to be revisited, and these corporations can say, we already did our share, we already paid for the cleanup, and then we're going to be in a way different situation later where taxpayers may actually be on the hook for a cleanup. So it's time that we hold the corporations responsible the first time, and that's why number 7 is the most protective. And I just want to ask the opposite question that was asked earlier. By a show of hands, who supports the full excavation of the landfill and off-site storage?
Yeah.
Where 1,000 of us stand today, there will be 2,000 tomorrow until this remedy is signed for the real excavation of the radioactive waste.
Good evening. Thank you for being with us and listening to our comments. 74 years, 45 years, total disrespect and disregard. Randy Hine, Councilman, Ward 3, Richmond. Total disregard and disrespect for human life and humanity, and you want to leave some of it behind and let this continue? How many more casualties? How many more? I see a lot more if you let this happen. Please, I ask for full excavation and disposal off-site of this rim. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Alderman Pelker, City of St. Anne. The Groundwater is said to be severely contaminated, which means radiation is getting into the leachate that flows through that pipe that flows 7.5 miles past schools, businesses, and homes from the landfill down St. Charles Rock Road through till it hits I-170, where it then free flows through the sewers throughout all of North St. Louis County and City, till it winds up in the Mississippi River. And when there is flooding, the gates at the end of Bissell are open and no filtering is done. 16 feet is just not deep enough to dig down to remove all that waste and then cap it. There are two, from what I understand, 18-wheeler trucks full of that contaminated stuff about 50 feet down. Your own report shows that there is a danger to not removing the entire product. They must get those trucks out of there for our groundwater to be safe, because there is no clay bottom to this landfill. Over the last 4 decades, who knows just how far this has already spread to. The federal government gave Mallinckrodt complete immunity in creating and disposing of the nuclear Manhattan Project, thus leaving only the federal government responsible for all the details involved with it. In my view, the federal government should also be including radar remediations needed because of all the dumping and spilling all over the St. Louis area. Not understanding the oil and these products on the airport properties prior to its removal in the 70s and during the 70s during its removal. Why wasn't this checked out back then? Now my residents have been notified of the possibility that their properties have been contaminated. This never should have happened to begin with. The previous administration's EPA treated these residents as collateral damage. Let's make sure the current administration does it right. And for God's sake, our lives are worth it for something.
Hello, my name is Ed Smith with the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. We have long supported the full removal and off-site disposal of the radioactive waste at the Westlake Landfill. We also support Alternative 7 because it addresses the 3 questions the EPA put forth in the proposed remedy. It addresses the depth, which would be all of it, the contamination, which is decrease it down to 7.9 picocuries per gram, and then support for off-site disposal. The full removal option is needed because the EPA has failed in its ability to enforce institutional controls during its oversight of the landfill since the year 1990. The EPA says that if it leaves radioactivity behind, that it'll use institutional controls to keep people safe. But since 1990, there was a fire in the North Quarry in the mid-90s. The EPA was notified of that fire, yet there was no consideration of fire in the EPA's 2008 record of decision to cap and leave the radioactive material. There's this area what's known as the buffer zone. The EPA had some signs up, but that didn't stop people from moving equipment into that area, removing the radioactive material and spreading it over an expanded parking lot, now known as the AAA trailer. And the EPA did not identify the rim under what Don would like to not call the muffin top. That stuff would have been 40 feet deep had the EPA identified the radioactive contamination that was there in 2000 during its first remedial investigation, which was clearly not good enough. So for these reasons, the EPA has failed to enforce institutional controls. We can't expect the EPA to do that for the next 9,000 years, and having to remove this stuff eventually in the future is just going to cost taxpayers more money. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Jade Lynn, and I'm a senior at Fort Zumwalt East High School, where I'll be attending Stanford University next fall. I'll be enlisting the help of the greatest minds in the country to help me follow and research this site, and I'll be talking fast, so listen up. A few weeks ago, the EPA's own review board, the NRRB, called them out for the fact that they don't know enough about their site, or at least that they're willing to disclose. We want the data, because it's been some shady and sometimes even incompetent. In fact, tonight, I'm submitting a several-page commentary on everything I, a high schooler with no technical background, could find wrong with your proposed amendment. What we're leaving in the ground is only going to get hotter and more dangerous. It's on a bell curve, so it gets worse worse before it gets better. And it's taking our loved ones with rare diseases at an alarming rate now. But if we leave that much waste for that long, one can only imagine how bad this is going to get. Can anyone name a civilization that has lasted 9,000 years? A language? A text? Not even the Bible is that old. So how are we going to warn people that there is nuclear waste here that will kill them, especially as it gets more dangerous in this floodplain, in a tornado-prone and earthquake-susceptible area, and right now next to a literal fire? Is this the legacy our generation wants to leave on the planet? To only dig 16 feet, leave the stuff in the groundwater, and to continue leaching into the groundwater, and to leave over 70% of this waste to get hotter and keep killing people for years to come? Help the citizens of Bridgeton, for real, once and for all. Get them out of here, get the waste out of here, get all of it out, not just 16 feet, not just 52.9 PCI per gram, not on site, but all of it, out of Bridgeton. I'm for Alternative 7. We're done with this rad waste legacy bullshit. We want change. We want change. We want change. Look at us. There are 1,000 people here. The world is watching us tonight, and it's pertinent we make the right decisions, because those decisions, your decisions, are going to impact this land and the people who live here for 9,000 years. Not a lot of people have the opportunity to say they made that kind of change in the world. So when you do, make sure it's for the better.
This record of decision cannot be made without protecting the families of this community. I grew up as a child not getting to see my dad every day. He was a Pattonville firefighter for over 30 years that proudly served and protected the families of this community. I recently attended a community meeting and listened to a Pattonville firefighter state that if an incident happened at this landfill, they would not be able to protect my family or the families of Spanish Village. Relocation is the only option regardless of what record of decision is made. The suggested remedy does not call for complete removal of all radioactive waste. How is leaving any of this radioactive waste in a floodplain and tornado alley safe for this community? We have suffered long enough. Get this radioactive waste out of here, all of it. This site has never been fully and completely characterized. You cannot even tell me if radioactive material is currently burning in the South Quarry. Only digging 16 feet would be like only testing the top 2 inches at our local ball fields. Finally, to even consider storing this crap here is an insult to our community. It should have never been put here in the first place. It was put here illegally, and now it is the responsibility of our government to get it out of here. Mr. Kelly, you sat here in this very room this past October and told us that we will not have to judge you, that we do not have to believe what you say, that we will have to judge you by your actions. My response to you is actions speak louder than words.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Epstein. I'm actually not a St. Louis resident, or I'm not actually from here originally. I moved here in 2011 when I met my husband. We currently live in the third closest neighborhood to this landfill in Carrollton. And I will tell you this, that I just recently gave birth to a bouncing baby boy. And at this point in my life, I can't wait for you to make a decision. I have to make my own decisions, and according to my family, I have to leave. I want Alternative 7, I need Alternative 7, but to be honest, our mortgage is held by Wells Fargo, which is owned by Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae is a government mortgage holder. And if I can't keep my family here and keep them safe, and at Alternative 7 in 14 years, my baby's going to be 15 years old. 15 years old. I can't wait 15 years. I have to leave my property. I'm going to try to sell it. hopefully someone in there, and I don't even know if I have a moral obligation to sell it to someone, but I have to do what's right for my family. And if I have to get foreclosed on to get the hell out of here, to raise my family somewhere safe, then I will do that. 1,000 people are here to let you know that in 1970, this was a horrible mistake. Fix it. Fix it quickly. We can't do alternative 4. Nobody has time for that. We have families here that are dying. Make a good choice. Being able to lay your head down at night and save our community. Thank you so much.
Folks, please be moving towards this aisle here, to these chairs. And since we have a little tiny break, the right now we're going to stand up for just a second. You know, a couple of minutes. We're going to be here for a long time, so just stand up for everyone here. Okay, Kate Kurpanish and Flor, Jay Hoover, R. Daly, and Beckerman, D. Lizard, C. Caruso, and T. Douglas. If you're here, please.
Quick question.
Okay, we got those again, so please sit down now.
You're back. Real quick, please. Tell me about this fire. How hot is it? I want your opinion. You don't know.
Okay, very good. Okay, we're going to start speaking again.
Compost is good. How do you have an underground fire?
Stop, everyone, please.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Kurpash. Thank you for inviting me here to speak. I am 65 years of age. I have worked at the Westlake Quarry and Landfill for approximately 13 years, from 1971 to 1984. My employment can be verified through the Teamsters Local 682 in St. Louis, Missouri. If you want to check it out, and I was not advised of any hazardous chemicals waste all the time that I was employed there, and was not ever warned of any hazards in the quarry. I also worked at Hamburg Quarry next to Weldon Spring site, and there was barrels of hazardous materials there. They often told me, don't worry about it, it won't hurt you. I worked through the years. My mother was diagnosed with cancer and passed away. My wife, to the present day, has stage 4 ovarian cancer. And my daughter has no thyroid. I've had numerous tumors come off of my back from working in this poison. And it's just a terrible burden. This was given to myself and my family. And this site should never have been here. If you're going to make something like this, make sure you got a place to get rid of it first before you ever make it. I observed unethical practices. I'm one of the ones that witnessed the trucks being buried on Site 1. They're probably over 30 or 40 feet of dirt, and you're talking 12 feet. Yeah, that's going to work. And where Schumann paving is on the north end of the quarry, There was never any snow there, no matter how cold it got in the winter, because the hazardous waste is so bad there. And every one of Bill Schumann's men is gone, and so is the operators from Westlake Quarry Material. There's only about 8 left. Thank you for your time.
My name is Carla Kirkpash-Alsbury. My father is Ken Kirkpash, who just spoke, and I'm here tonight to tell you my story. As far back as I can remember, I remember the story that my dad would tell my mom, Lori, that he worked at Westlake Quarry. He was working there to support our family. He told my mom over and over again through the years about trucks being buried on the evening shift. He didn't understand why 2 large semis would be buried and people leave them behind. I'm pretty sure that these trucks are more than 16 feet deep. I can tell you that I don't live in this community. I live in Troy, Missouri, but our family has been affected. I don't have a thyroid. They told me I was probably exposed to radiation at some point in my life. That's why I have follicular adenoma. They removed my entire thyroid in 2009. My mother currently has ovarian cancer, and my grandmother died with cancer. Remember, we're the ones that did my dad's laundry when he would get home from the landfill. I can tell you that the effects of this reach far, and I'm telling you that I've only heard this proposal tonight, and Alternative 7 seems to be the best one. All of this needs to be cleaned up, and I am asking you to please dig the trucks up. My dad knows where they're buried, and I know they're probably more than 16 feet. We are committed to helping. I have my dad's employment records from 1971, from 1984, and we can verify when he was working at the site. We're here to help. We want to be part of the solution. Our family has been affected. Thank you for having me here tonight.
My name is Patty Bealey, and I'm here on behalf of my brother, Scott Bealey, and his widow, Karen Bealey. Many of you here this evening are here because of a direct link between the landfill and your own health or that of someone that you love. My brother's story is nearly incomprehensible, as his exposure occurred in 1979 at the age of 20. He passed away 2 years ago at the age of 57 on March 24th, just a couple of weeks from now. I am here with Mike Orr, a dear childhood friend of Scott's, to tell you Scott's story and the link with the landfill. His death was absolutely linked to the landfill waste and is absolutely no coincidence.
I'm here tonight because my friend Scott Bealey died of cancer and nobody saw it coming. Scott enjoyed almost perfect health until he developed a cough the summer of 2014 at the age of 55. In March of 2015, Scott finally went to an urgent care and was diagnosed with bronchitis. The next year, as the cough persisted, Scott's annual checkup was scheduled for June, but he finally agreed to make an appointment in May with his physician. In less than a minute with the doctor, he was on his way to the radiology for a chest x-ray. When he opened up the chest x-ray, it was almost a complete whiteout, just a small area of each lung exchanging air. Scott had a biopsy. The results were devastating. Stage 4 adenocarcinoma. The tiny mucus cells in his lungs had turned into tumors, hundreds, perhaps thousands. Samples were sent for genetic testing and revealed no genetic markers. He had no history of lung cancer in his extended family, even among smokers. One night during Scott's illness, he and his wife Karen were listening to a radio show about the fire heading to the landfill and about the nuclear waste dumped there. Karen will never forget when he told her that he was at that landfill every day in the summer of 1979. She wondered if there was a connection between the landfill and the cancer. Scott worked for BFI, Browning Ferris Industries, that summer, in the construction waste hauling group. He visited the landfill every day, at least once every day that summer, to dump waste from government sites. They had no protection, driving through the landfill with windows down and wearing personal shoes and clothing. Scott enjoyed, we believe Scott is a perfect index case for worker exposure at the landfill. Scott worked there one summer and then went on to a career in banking. 3 common factors of cancer diagnosis are genetics, family history, and environmental exposure. Scott did not have genetic markers or family history. Other than the time he spent with BFI, Scott was a banker and never smoked cigarettes. The CDC released a report dated October 15, 2016, linking the thorium particles in the landfill with increased lung cancer risk in workers at the landfill. 1 particle of thorium inhaled into the lung is enough to cause lung cancer in the future. Unrelated bronchitis can trigger the cancer. Unfortunately, healthy people like Scott have no reason to get a chest x-ray. Scott passed away less than a year from diagnosis and biopsy. We want his name to be placed on a list of victims from exposure to the landfill. But more importantly, the state of Missouri only tracks cancer by zip code and occupation. His family moved to Georgia, and Scott was a banker, so he missed by both tracking code and occupation.
Mike, I'm going to have to ask you to...
And so notifying treating workers from landfill and hauling companies must be considered.
Hello, I'm Jan Huber. First of all, let me thank you for not only listening to our community, but hearing us. My only wish is I could give you 100% of my thanks instead of just 70%. I am tired of carrying 47,000 tons of radioactive waste every day of my life. I take it to bed with me, I pick it up in the morning, and I carry it with me all day long. Please lighten my burden and remove 100% of this radioactive waste. Many Bridgeton residents deal with unwanted house gas, thorium-230, radium, polonium, to name a few. Considering there is contamination well outside the perimeters of the landfill, what are your plans to stop further contamination? How will you keep this community safe? Try to imagine what your life would be like, knowing any given moment of any given day, your life may consist of sheltering in place or evacuating. Knowing your first responders will not rescue you, knowing there are no superheroes. Be our superheroes. Alternative 7.
Before you begin, let me just say, those of you whose names are on board, please start making your way over to the aisle on my left. Thank you very much.
My name is Robin Daly. I am a Ground Zero resident of Westlake Landfill and living with 1,000 picocuries of thorium in my home, Manhattan Project source. I'm going to tell you that I prefer off-site storage, alternative 7. It's about the people and our environment, and it's always been about the people. It's not about the big-pocketed PRPs who are going to moan, groan, because they're going to be spending money for off-site storage. What kind of price do we put on the community and its residents for their lives, their health, and their peace of mind for generations to come, for the next 1,000 years? And this radiotoxic stuff is potent for at least 9,000. So we can't do a half-assed job. We got to do it right the first time. We're not going to let it fall through the cracks like we've been doing for 45 years, being silent, having apathy, and not giving a damn about this situation. Because you've heard these people, and you're going to hear more. We are hurting. We got to get this stuff out of here. We got to go deeper. You heard about the trucks. We've heard about the trucks. We want those trucks. We want that. We want deeper. We want more pico fury. We want the safest protection possible. For God's sakes, we deserve it.
My name is Megan Beckerman, and while I'd like to be up here thanking EPA for a remedy that this community, rather than the owners of this landfill, can be pleased with, that's not the case. So I'm going to tell you a few things I will not thank you for. I will not thank you for the many studies you have done at this site, because the studies were and still are done by the landfill owners that do not want to spend money cleaning this site up. I will not thank you for offering to partially clean up what is left from some of the world's oldest, most deadliest, most concentrated radioactive waste known to man. I will not thank you when you say your remedy will clean the majority of contamination. You cannot know the majority if you don't know the total. And you've never fully categorized this site. Instead, you found it easier to just say, oh here, we will do your community a favor and treat the waste like uranium mill tailing waste. Those guidelines should be protective enough, when in reality the concentrations of radium and thorium at the Westlake landfill are substantially greater than uranium mill tailings. I will not thank you. Oh, this one's hard. I will not thank you, and I will never, ever forgive you for giving parents a false sense of security by doing the bare minimum of going only down 2 inches when testing the soil at the BMAC ball fields, when you know independent testing went deeper and found radioactive waste with the unique signature of what was used in making the atomic bomb used in World War II. Children breathe and ingest that dust daily to this day. I will not thank you for offering a cap that only provides protection for 200, possibly 1,000 years, when the radioactivity here is expected to continue rising for 9,000. I will not thank you for considering a remedy that leaves 74% of the radiologically impacted soil in the ground with no liner to protect the already contaminated groundwater. I will not thank you for a remedy that has the owners of this waste saying they are pleased with EPA's decision. These same owners have fought us, moms, tooth and nail every step of the way and based their decisions on how much money rather than lives they save, but they're pleased with your decision. There should be no compromising to please corporations like Republic Services when it comes to life or death decision. Our children deserve to be kept 100% safe, not partially safe. With no less than alternative number 7, independent testing, full removal, permanent relocation of Spanish Village, and off-site, out-of-state storage at a licensed facility. I will say thank you when you make decisions that protect our children with the same, better safe than sorry diligence that you use when you protect your children. And I'm going to add one thing in here from my 8-year-old that came up to you before he had to leave, and he said, while you have the tools out, just dig it all up.
Hi, my name is Debbie Disser and I'm from St. John. I found out about the contamination of Cold Water Creek and Bridgeton Westlake landfill in 2012. That's when I realized why, in 2008, I lost my brother Doug at age 43 to a stage 4 glioblastoma multiform brain tumor. We grew up in Berkeley along one of the haul routes between Malaprop and St. Louis airport side. We played on the ball fields in the creek and attended festivals directly across from the airport side. Doug also worked as I do near the Bridgeton Westlake landfill. So I won't know if it's here where we grew up or where we worked that caused his brain tumor. For those who live, work, and shop near the landfill, I wonder about what impact it is having on them. I know what impact it has had on myself, my family, my friends, who grew up and lived and live within reach of this radioactive waste product of the Mountain Hot Project is sickness and death. The waste has a latency period for cancers and autoimmune issues that can't be ignored, and with the history of the landfill for fires, toxic odors, and the above-ground fires in 2013 and 15, those living closest should be offered relocation, as no one should have to live with the uncertainties and stress day in and day out from this site. The selective remedy option 4, I don't think is really an option. I think option 7 is what's needed at this landfill. I feel that any radioactive waste removed needs to be sent off-site to a licensed facility and not left at a site that has experienced torrential downpours, is in an earthquake and tornado zone, prone to landfill fires, is sitting in the Missouri River floodplain upstream from the drinking water for not only our community, but all the communities along the Mississippi River down to the Gulf of Mexico. This community deserves better. Our children deserve better. Please relocate those closest to this contaminated Superfund site and excavate to the fullest extent possible this radioactive waste and ship it to a facility that is licensed to handle it. Thank you.
My name is Kristen Caruso. Inside this field is more like a victim impact statement than a public comment. I'm about 1 week away from my 5-year cancer anniversary. I am broken and sick. I consider EPA an accomplice to my attempted murder, and I am here to hold you accountable. Mr. Kelly, when you were here in the listening session, you said you have every reason to doubt us, you have to judge us by our action. Well, Mr. Kelly, I'm bringing down the gavel. When you offered partial removal, you offered a partial solution. Today, Region 7 still has not completely characterized the site. They don't know what's what or where what is. They continue to ignore, even though we've requested multiple times that we consider 2 independent, peer-reviewed investigations that reveal widespread off-site contamination. This includes the British Municipal Athletic Complex. Region 7's only response to the independent findings of BMAC was a day at the park with some spoons. They intentionally did the absolute least just to offer this community a false sense of security. EPA has wasted 28 years and only allowed a horrible situation to get worse. You have been negligent, deceitful, and disrespectful to the power of this waste and the health and safety of this community and our natural resources. The people living within a 1-mile radius need a voluntary permanent relocation option. Not only are they at a higher risk of exposure to the world's oldest nuclear weapons waste, but also all the toxins coming from the underground fire. It's one big sloppy cocktail of poison, and there's no guarantee that those flares are burning off all the toxins before they enter the atmosphere. This burning Superfund site belongs to you, and under CERCLA, you have the authority to relocate the people today. We all know there is radioactive material located much deeper than 16 feet. This one-size-fits-all solution will not accomplish the cleanup this community needs or deserves. I understand there will be inaccessible soils within Area 1 due to the underground fire. However, there is no justification for not implementing Alternative 7 for Area 2. This is the furthest from the fire and houses the majority of the radioactive waste. I also want a declaration from the EPA to return and remove the remaining radioactive waste in Area 1 to Alternative 7 levels once the fire is out. And conduct complete grid testing across the entire site. The true extent of this contamination must be known and remediated. The cancer risk to the community and cost to store on-site is too high and poses too much of a risk. Storing the RIM on-site in the Missouri River floodplain in earthquake and tornado zones and a highly populated suburban area is unacceptable. All the removed waste needs to be transported and permanently stored off-site in an out-of-state licensed nuclear facility, the same as all the radioactive waste in St. Louis and North County is handled. We cannot regain the lost 28 years, but we can begin to reconcile this for future generations.
My name is Tara Douglas, and I'm here tonight to wonder why, ask you why aren't these lives important to you? My daughter just said to me, it's like going in, I had breast cancer, I'll be 5 years in August. It's like going in and saying, okay, we're going to go in, we're going to do 27% of the edge. We're going to take 70% out. Maybe you'll make it, maybe you won't. That's what we feel like you're doing to us tonight. I want to know why you think partial removal will keep the remaining radioactive contamination from seeping into the groundwater and escaping off-site and eventually poisoning the area for miles and miles. I want to know why you don't test both landfills. Until 1985, they were one landfill, and yet you find it not necessary to test the entire area. I want to know why they're saying that it's clean dirt that was spread around, and everybody who knows anything about a landfill knows that the dirt is spread all over the landfill, not just in certain areas. You ask an employee there, and they'll tell you, we spread the dirt everywhere. It's clean dirt to cover up the odor. I also want to know, and I need you to show me because I'm from the show me state, why 16 feet is deep enough to dig and remove all the Manhattan Project waste that our government carelessly spread around. I want to know why you think we should accept this. Give us a scientific, 100% proven fact that this contamination that is left behind will never injure another human being. Most of all, I want to know why our lives mean so little to you and our government that you could ignore this landfill for 45 years and the city of St. Louis for 76 years. How long will we continue to be the victims of World War II?
Hi, my name is Kirby Pemberton, and I was born and raised in Spanish Village in 1971, and I lived there until 1977. In 1973, when I was a small child, they started illegally dumping radioactive waste in the Westwood landfill. Since leaving Spanish Village at the age of 6, I have lived within 5 miles of the Westlake landfill in Maryland Heights. I have lost my daughter to a brain tumor, glioblastoma multiforme, and she was 12 years old. This is what I have left of my daughter, right here. This is what I have left besides the memories. And glioblastomas are also one of the 27 brain tumors that can be confirmed from ionizing radiation. I have other sick children at home. I myself just had an ovary removed. I have to go to the David C. Pratt Cancer Center tomorrow to have my bladder checked because I have a spot on my bladder. My children are scared. They hear the word cancer, they think I'm gonna die. They've lost a sister. They know what cancer means. This community deserves things to be fixed. First, we want a buyout and a relocation of people living within 1 mile of the Westlake landfill. This is one of our top priorities because the people who live there, they're not safe. Next, we want radioactive waste to be removed and placed off-site. All of it, 100%. We need this taken care of. And most importantly, we can't leave 30%. We can't do it. This issue doesn't just affect Bridgeton. It affects many communities surrounding, as well as it is time to take care of this issue. Once and for all, we the people deserve nothing less. And I would like Scott Pruitt to show up to one of these meetings. And join a meeting so we can see the suffering that we go through.
My children are scared. They hear cancer, they think we're dying. That is so unfair, so unfair. And I should not have to have this as my reminder of my daughter. This is my only personal thing that I can touch to remember her, besides my memories that will never disappear or go away. Thank you.
Before we begin, folks, I just want to say, you know, I hate to be the one to keep saying we do need to keep it to around 2 minutes. Because if we're going to get through this, you know, tonight, it's really at the Austin. Remember, you can submit as much as you want to EPA through April 23rd.
I've got all night.
You want to hear it? I'm going to be able to all closes.
Hello, my name is Izzy and I'm a freshman at Kansas Health Central. I was diagnosed with asthma a few months after moving to Maryland Heights in 2010. As a 7-year-old, gasping for breath was absolutely terrifying. We moved away from the site in 2015 and I have not had to use my rescue inhaler since. I am living proof that the people living within a 1-mile radius need to be relocated. The longer these people live here, the sicker and more exposed they'll get. When I was 10 years old, my mom was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. I had to watch her go through several surgeries and radiation therapy. I didn't understand the gravity of what was happening, and it was a lot for me to take in, seeing my own mom sick in bed and barely knowing why. EPA Region 7 has lied about the safety of this community since the start. Not only have you failed this community, but you have failed to do your one job, protect the environment. The amount of waste removed needs to be the highest amount possible, much more than 67 overall radiation. And the waste should be stored off-site, out of state, in a licensed nuclear facility. 16 feet is not enough. It's time that you actually start doing something that benefits the people living in the St. Louis region. I support Alternative 7.
Good evening, my name is Brianne McCormick, and I was a resident in the area for 10 years living in Spanish Village neighborhood. First off, I want to thank you for finally establishing that there is a health risk associated with this site. For so long, we were told we were crazy, that as long as we didn't go inside the fence, we were fine. But I still feel like there's a couple of important issues that need to be addressed. First of all, there needs to be a voluntary buyout of Spanish Village neighborhood. Many of the people in that area feel like they're trapped. They have no way out. Several of the houses have been tested by, not the EPA, I know you did your own test and yours came back fine. However, it's a different level of testing. If you guys aren't going to go in there at the same time, do the exact same test, take those samples back to your lab, I have a hard time believing it. Many of those houses have come back positive for radiation. I need you to imagine hearing that there's radiation in your vacuum cleaner, having a 5- and a 3-year-old who were born in that house, who rolled on that carpet, who crawled. I don't have to imagine it. It was my house. That can't be acceptable. No one should have to live in that hell knowing that their own house is potentially making them sick and that their government is not protecting them against this threat. So there has to be a buyout of Spanish Village and anything within 1 mile radius. It just has to happen. This is the first time I fought for a buyout of Spanish Village and the surrounding areas. I was active in going to Jeff City to try to get the state to provide a buyout. We heard things from committees that passed it unanimously, say things like, this is really a federal government issue, but we're going to stand up for our residents government isn't. We're going to show that Missouri has your back. Unfortunately, that bill died because a certain group lobbied highly against it. Even though it passed the Senate, it died in the House of Reps. It's your turn again. You're here. You need to do the right thing. Prove they were wrong, that our federal government truly does have our back. The other thing I want to talk to you about is this discussion on on-site, off-site remediation. You have to go as deep as you can to get it out. I don't understand how you can just say 16 feet, it's done. I don't get that. I'm a teacher. I can't just let my kids do, well, you do this, you know, you get a 50%, you're fine. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to do the most you can, the best you can. Off-site is the only option. Even looking at your own percent about risk, looking at option 7 and option 8. I'm trying to remember, I'm sorry. I think it was, yes. My time is up. Sorry. Oh, no, I just want to say one thing.
We have about 20 or 30 minutes.
75 lives is the difference, according to your own studies. That's worth millions of dollars to me.
Please come to the aisle here and sit down. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Diana Vasilonov. I live in Chesterfield, and more than 20 years ago we made a safe move, as we consider to be making a safe move. We moved from Belarus, the republic, one of the republics of previous Soviet Union and now independent country, to move our daughter safe from consequences of Chernobyl. We moved to St. Louis. That was the best choice. So when I was growing up, my parents always told me, whatever you do in life, do it well. Put all your effort and energy into it, so you wouldn't regret or be embarrassed with it later. I think that this is especially good advice while considering the remedy for the Westlake landfill. It is obvious that EPA should do everything to prevent future water and soil contamination after the actions are taken and money spent. It will be impossible to go back and fix it. It is better to do it right from the beginning, and that includes going as deep as necessary to remove all the radioactive waste that there is, because as long as there is at least something, groundwater, and soon after our water supply will continue getting contaminated. Storing all that waste off-site and out of close proximity of the densely populated metropolitan area with about 3 million people. Protecting people during evacuation by providing a voluntary relocation of those living near the landfill. And moreover, I want to say to protecting people who are working on the remedy, because those workers, those people are going to feel the first fallen. People of St. Louis area have been dealing with consequences of negligence and have done solutions to a nuclear waste problem for more than 60 years. We think that this time it should be done well. And the solution option number 7 is clearly the one. Today is 4 years to a day since my dad passed away from glioblastoma, the cancer linked to radiation. He got his from Chernobyl. How many people here have lost their relatives from the same type of cancer, and the only known way is radiation? So I think that we have to think about it, not just for now, but for 100 years ahead, 200 years ahead, 9,000 years ahead. 70% taken out, that still leaves 30. And who is going to get sick by those 30? You just need a teeny tiny drop. Thank you.
My name is Maggie Wen. I'm a student at Washington University, and I have been involved with the Westlake landfill issue for the majority of my college career, along with many of my fellow students. I have seen the trauma, health issues, and immeasurable fear that living by this landfill has caused Bridgeton residents. So I am glad that the EPA has decided to acknowledge their struggle by enacting a remediation plan. I urge the EPA to consider voluntary relocation of the residents within 1 mile of the landfill due to the risk of recontamination and the ongoing release of toxic chemicals from the Bridgeton landfill that puts these residents' health in danger. The Bridgeton community has lived in fear of this landfill for years. They should not be forced to remain at risk while the site is being remediated. I also support removal of the waste to an out-of-state licensed facility. The Westlake landfill lies in the floodplain of the Missouri River. My own research submitted to Region 7 EPA has demonstrated that it has a low elevation that is very vulnerable to flooding. So storing the waste on site leaves the community as well as the surrounding St. Louis area at unnecessary risk of recontamination. The cost of constructing a storage facility that could weather the diverse and unpredictable environmental conditions at Bridgeton for over 9,000 years is far greater than the cost of simply removing the waste to an already licensed facility. Finally, although I'm glad that the EPA has proposed excavation of the waste, I urge you to excavate all the radiation. It is imperative that all the radiation should be removed so that the groundwater will not become increasingly contaminated. This is the safest, most permanent solution for the community, as well as the ongoing remediation of the groundwater located upstream of St. Louis's drinking water intake. As citizens of St. Louis and allies of the community members most endangered by this landfill, my fellow students and I urge the EPA to do what is right and enact a full and thorough cleanup at the Westlake landfill.
My name is Carolyn Bauer. I'm a retired newspaper journalist. I wrote about Westlake and other contaminated areas in the 1980s. Thank you for recognizing how toxic this is and how, as it decays, it will get worse. But please consider Alternative 7. Go beyond the proposal to remove contamination to 16 feet. This radioactive material needs to be removed as much of it as possible and taken to a licensed nuclear facility. Every exposure to radiation increases risk of damage to cells, tissue, and DNA. Exposure to radiation can cause cancer, birth defects, genetic mutations, immunity disorders. Westlake was neither designed nor licensed to receive radioactive material. Materials must be removed from Westlake because dangerous levels, for example, gamma radiation of more than 1 million counts per minute in your own reports at levels of 87 feet down to 90 feet are below the landfill right now. Westlake radioactive materials are in the floodplain of the Missouri River. They've already migrated into the groundwater according to a report from 1996 and a report from 2012. And the groundwater rises and falls according to the river levels and heavy rainfall. If Scott Pruitt wants to come to St. Louis, we can tell him about last spring where we had 10 to 12 inches of rain in one day. My own basement flooded, and I'm south of here, about 5 miles. The Missouri River provides a major source of drinking water for St. Louis City and county and communities further south. Putting a cap over radioactive material in an unlined landfill is like putting a cover on a strainer. It doesn't prevent contamination, and no pumping system designed to extract contaminants from the landfill could possibly work for thousands of years. This will remain radioactive.
Hi, my name is Richard Schuessler. I'm a St. Louis County resident and a board member of the U.S. Green Building Council Missouri Gateway Chapter. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. A lot of people have talked about the environmental, human aspect. I want to talk about the economic impact. This has already been a huge black eye on the community and businesses and property owners. We've heard people can't sell their homes. There's moral obligation to disclose. Property values are going down. No one wants to relocate businesses to this area, bring jobs to our community because of this problem. And for that reason, we not only need to select Alternative 7, but we need to do it in a quick and effective manner. I work in insurance and risk management, and this is Tornado Alley, there's flooding, we're in earthquake zone, New Madrid. Private insurance companies realize the high hazard of catastrophic events. So while the project might cost $400 million, we can start adding zeros to that if a tornado blows through, or we have an earthquake, or there's a flood. So if it comes down to dollars or cents, we need to look long term and not just short term, because we've been doing that and it hasn't worked. Thank you.
Susan Foley, and I live in Winslow, Missouri. I am dedicating my talk to a friend of mine, Laurie, who can't be here tonight. She wanted to speak, but she's undergoing cancer treatment and really can't be in the crowd. Plus, she's very ill. With the wind blowing today and the previous rains we've had, I can't help but wonder what's being blown off the landfill or seeping into the groundwater. What additional molecules will come off the landfill when the remediation starts? I would hope that the EPA and other entities who have the power to do so will relocate residents who suffered for years with odors, inadequate air and water testing, and fear. This is not what tax-paying, hard-working Americans deserve. This is supposed to be the American dream, and it's not. One thing I would like to see in the future is monthly testing of the runoff from the landfill and placement of additional monitors, air monitors, around the perimeters of the landfill with real-time release of data. If this remedy is chosen, it would be an enormous mistake for the longevity of Bridgeton and the surrounding area residents and businesses. Just like the food rep sites in St. Louis, we deserve to have the highest amount of radioactive material, RIM, removed from the landfill and taken by a covered train car to a licensed facility off-site. This arbitrary 16 feet depth is just that, arbitrary. There are many areas where RIM is located deeper and could be removed. One thing I'm asking is that anyone holding the positions that Mark Dietrich and Matt Lavanchi hold be part of the design phase and that it be put in the final plan. This will help ensure that the safety of residents will be optimum. If an engineer covers part of the final remedy, and I do not feel that safe for the tens of thousands of years it would be needed, it needs to be the thickest cap, not the 5 foot that's proposed, but the 7 foot 2 inch. There's also a concern about long-term institutional controls, and we need some assurance that whatever remedy is chosen, it will be safe for longer than a millennium. I'm concerned about seismic events, liquefaction factors, plane crashes, and people wandering in off the street as the decades go by. Can you guarantee these adverse events would not cause the public risk? How can a remedy be released without knowing the nature and extent of groundwater contamination of OU3? One thing we would like to see, and I'm speaking for other people, is that we would like to see Scott Pruitt come and face the folks in this room. Thank you, and I look forward to your response and decision on the remedy.
Good evening. My name is Doug Clemens. I'm from St. Anne, Missouri. I'm former chairman of the community advisory group here. I left that role because I'm running for state office. This is not a political issue. This is about the health and well-being of my community, myself included. A woman right behind me here, Kate Rye, 37 years ago, she sat me down and she told me about all the radioactive waste in North County and the dangers we were facing. I've been actively involved in this for 30 years. I've been waiting for you guys to do your job, and I'm happy that you're actually finally moving forward, and I want to thank you for that. But I don't want to get into the weeds here, but I want to tell you the same things I've been telling you for years and years and years and years. You have not done thorough testing of the site. You have not fully characterized it. We want to see good testing. But we're going to move forward with a plan. That plan needs to test as we go to make sure that we get it all, and I advocate for decision number 7, of course. The other things that we need to talk about here are the Nuclear Regulatory Commission report from the 1980s, where they told us this stuff was going off-site. That's how it went on in Robin Daly's house and the other people around that community. So we need to get in their homes, we need to relocate these folks, get them to a safe place so that we limit their exposure, although they've already been sitting in it for years. The stuff is offsite, we know it is, and we're not kidding anybody saying it's not. The other thing we need is property assurance. We need to save the tax base here. We work for a living in this community. It takes us a long time to build our schools and parks. We like where we live, and we don't want to see our tax base suffer because our property values fall out. It's within Superfund law that you can ensure that property values stick and that we get recompense for any losses that we have to this community, so Bridgeton and St. Anne and Maryland Heights don't lose any of their tax base. way. I'm disappointed in the way EPA handled BMAC. Ionizing radiation is incredibly harmful to children, incredibly harmful. A 2-inch test does not measure up to even legal standards except for the minimum. You guys need to get back there and retest BMAC. Clean up what needs to be cleaned up and let us know what you're really doing. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lois Arcanati. I'm speaking today as a concerned citizen who lives nearby, but also with a background in science. I have looked over the excavation plus, and I have serious issues with alternative 4. Your agency is charged, first of all, with protecting the environment, but the most important part of protecting the environment is preventing harm to people. So a top priority has to be the voluntary relocation and buyout of the people who live within a mile or more, if possible, of the site of the danger. These people have suffered for decades already and must be given appropriate relief soon. To see just a small amount of the proof of the hazard they live with, just look at the maps that show the clusters of illnesses in the area. And you've heard testimony tonight about the damage that has already been done and the lives that have already been lost. So voluntary relocation is way past due. Also, the excavation itself will be risky, and therefore they should be moved soon. The excavation must be done inside a security containment facility built to specifications, able to withstand a possible blast, and also able to prevent further dispersion of toxins and chemicals. I'd also like to see alternative 7 so that you're taking out the most amount of the contamination. Otherwise, if you don't take it all, you're simply creating a continuance of this problem. You're just going to be faced with something else happening later on. The current location is too close to the water source of a metropolitan area for any safe level to remain. The area is in a floodplain, and that's in an unlined quarry. Another issue I must emphasize is that I want the storage of the excavated waste to be off-site and as far away from this area as possible. The weather patterns and geographic conditions of the Midwest are a cause for concern as it is without leaving a toxic and radioactive soup in our area. Also, I want to emphasize that you need to make the corporations that cause this to pay their share of it. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Brian Graff, and I'm here tonight representing the Operating Engineers Union Local 513, which is a stone's throw away from Westlake Landfill. The Operating Engineers have a long-standing reputation in the St. Louis area of doing the best cleanup possible. We have participated in the Mountain Frog cleanup downtown, the slab site off of the airport. We did the Times Beach and Weld Springs, where I did the 2.5 years of cleanup out there. By the way, the Weld Springs site also is designated as a DEP Star status site, which is there designated with the Department of Energy. The operating engineer has spent many years and countless dollars providing training to our members in the classification of hazardous waste worker, radiological worker, first aid, CPR, and OSHA training. As of January 2nd this year, our apprenticeship training program has switched gears to help represent the residents of Bridgeton and North County. And since January 2nd this year, we provided 3,840 hours of hazmat training. We have also provided 1,112 hours of radiological worker training and 1,600 hours of OSHA training to prepare the workers of this area to get any of this cleanup done. Regardless of the avenue chosen by the EPA for the Westlake cleanup, the operating engineers are well equipped to handle any alternative you choose. Now, if it was me, I'd choose number 7. Give us the equipment, give us the green light, and we'll dig them trucks up with the Bridgeton residents deserve. I'm a 3rd-generation resident of Moore County. My family's property backed up to Coldwater Creek Creek. My wife was a second-generation family that fed with Coldwater Creek. My wife was diagnosed 3 months after I was married with an autoimmune disease directly connected to Coldwater Creek. Her father was diagnosed 15 years ago, and it's a non-hereditary disease. Why I'm telling you this is not because I want your sympathy, it's because I want you to understand we're ready to get in there and get this work done. If fuels my fire, I am the instructor for the hazardous material cleanup instructions at the Outdoor Training Facility, and we would like you to accompany us to one of our training classes to see what we do and how we do it, and know that we do provide the best workers that are going to provide the best opportunity for the residents of this area to get this cleaned up. Thank you.
My name is Carrie Robertson. I'm a relative newbie here. I've only been here 11 years, but I love St. Louis. I moved here knowing that there were a lot of problems. St. Louis is sort of a poster child for environmental issues. If you've learned about the environment, you've learned about Open Spring, you've learned about various other locations, and now I live in this place. I read about the storybooks. So I'd like to thank Scott Pruitt and Region 7 for finally paying some attention to this. And as experts in their field, they have come into this position and working for us. And most of them are doing their job pretty well. I'd like to make a couple requests. I'd like them to consider, when they decide what alternative to choose, think about how it's going to be at night when they go home. I'd like them to consider, when they talk about reducing the burden for those responsible, no, don't reduce that burden. Make them responsible for this is happening. Relocation issue. When you look at the cost for Superfund cleanup and the cost of relocation for these people, you will find out, I've done a few numbers, but I'm pretty sure when you compare those costs for relocation, it's going to be minuscule compared to removal of the waste. Get these people out, but they want out. If they don't want to leave, let them stay. It's a free country, right? Okay, disposal and storage. If you've looked at Superfund sites, I think some people realize that there's not going to be any cleanup until the disposal site is secured. And if the EPA wants to set me straight on that, I'd like to hear it. But they're not going to take this stuff out until they know where it's going. So unless you want it to sit on top of the landfill, or unless you want them to wait, we need to find an option, and I urge them to make the decision to take the best knowledge possible. I'm out of time. I'll send the rest in. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Pat Powers. I'm a resident of Hazelwood currently, but I lived for 16 years in Maryland Heights. And what I'd like you to know, first of all, is that I'm disappointed to find out that my government has been lying to me over and over about the damage and the possibilities that could happen here. Very disappointed in that. I'm disappointed in companies that have allowed their employees to be at risk, like this gentleman who knows where the truck is buried. Where is communication about warning and prevention and the things that our union leader here was speaking of? Education, communication, and prevention. It has to happen. It should have been happening 40 years ago for the people working at the landfill. I'm disappointed in learning that there are political people in the room who may have taken contributions from the very people we are talking about here. I would like to take a public record and find out just which politicians, which mayors have received how much money from the current trash haulers. And it's public record, so we can all answer the question. I am proud of St. Louis moms. There's nothing I can say to honor them. And stand out. I have a story. The indicators from my genetic testing said there was no way I could have breast cancer. I have none in my family, and yet yesterday I was declared cancer-free after a year of treatment. Not for just one breast, but for 2 breasts. Not just for one kind of breast cancer, but a different cancer in each breast. Nobody's heard of that. And it's because I lived in Maryland Heights and trusted my politicians. Good evening.
found out about this, and to be honest with you, it's been a total shock. This isn't my area of expertise, but I have taught research methods at a college, and I'm telling you, if somebody presented me with the amount of testing and the kind of testing that I've seen for this to assess this situation, I'd give them an F. And this is our federal government with all kinds of resources and scientists. This is where we have WashU here and St. Louis University. We have tons of people that can help us test this better. Yet, from what I can see, the testing has been so minimal. Why would we make such an expensive decision based on such minimal testing? And why are we spending so much time deciding when we don't even have all the knowledge we need? We know one thing. There's tons and tons of evidence out there about how toxic radiation is. There's tons of evidence about how it moves around. It doesn't just float up. So you can't just put a cap on it, because that's not how it works. We know that it spreads around. We know that it causes certain kinds of cancer. We have all of this, but somehow we haven't done enough to test it so we can make sure it's clean. Because all these people here are not reassured. They're angry. That means something's not right. And we have a chance to make it right. This administration has a chance to do that and impress all of us. But if we don't, how are you going to sleep at night when you heard that there's these trucks underground? When you heard from numerous people that the testing was inadequate? When you heard all of this? How can you sleep knowing you didn't do the utmost for such a known carcinogen? For something that's so deadly? How can you not do more and test and make sure it's done right? Because this is something we have a lot of knowledge about. This is something we have the skills and the expertise in this country to do the right thing. And I feel strongly that you guys know this. And if you don't, if you don't do enough testing, it's just equivalent to fraud. That's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. And let it be glossed over. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carolyn Calder. I'm a volunteer with the Sierra Club in St. Louis. Now I'm here speaking on behalf of the Missouri Sierra Club, especially the local group. Our local group has about 2,300 members in the county and about 800 some in the city. We would also like to extend the invitation to Scott Pruitt to come. I'm going to cut short some of the things I wanted to say. I'd like to just say briefly, we support Alternative 7. And with reference to the questions about evaluating Alternative 4, as many folks have said, the 16-foot limit seems quite arbitrary. Any limit should be guided by the intensity of the radioactive material and by the water table. And we actually, I know this amendment is about the OU1. We're looking forward to more information about the third part about protecting the water table. I have been very inspired by what we've heard tonight. People have just been very clear and impassioned and thoughtful. To paraphrase, this is kind of what democracy sounds like. And I really hope folks, you all are listening and will respond. I'd also like to say thank our interpreter. I've been watching and almost feel as though I am learning and hearing through her. She is doing a wonderful job. The most important, thank you. The most important people here are the residents that live close to this facility. Listen to them most closely. We certainly favor a buyout. It is just indispensable. You recognize that there is uncertainty even under the best of circumstances. In another part of my volunteer role, I've done some research on floodplains and buyouts on floodplains for folks who get frequently flooded. We do that, and this is such a long-term and serious risk. We should be doing the same. It should be as frequent alternative as a buyout in a flood-prone area. And that's it. Thank you very much.
My name is Mike Jordy. I'm the president of a citizen group, St. Charles County and St. Edwards Waste. We were involved in the Logan Springs cleanup for many years. And over the years, I've found you just don't want to make some miles mad. You don't want to mess up the miles even. Francis Hall moms were concerned about the airborne contamination from the Francis Hall site. They got a lot of people motivated, myself included. I appreciate the moms here. Partial removal with on-site storage may be a cheaper alternative, but that's about it. Nothing more. Another speaker correctly stated, how do you know how much you're removing if you don't know what to count it? This site is not been characterized. How many times do you guys need to do it? You know, it's an online, this is another thing, but you gotta hear this again, it's an online quarry in the floodplain. In Weldon Springs, at least we got the Weldon Springs quarry removed completely. You know, and it's only the groundwater monitoring plan that gives us safety to look at the water quality of the water district number 2. Well, this site is in the floodplain, and it needs complete source reduction. Maybe a little bit near the fire leave, but to remove part of it is ridiculous. Thousands of years from now, people are going to say, why the heck didn't they remove this stuff when they were here? It's crazy. Weldon Springs, it is the groundwater monitoring plan. You don't know where this stuff is all. There's the source, the site, and then there's the area that's been contaminated. This is already going down the river, and it has been for a long time. And to think that you could put a disposal site on the same location in a membrane line that's going to only last maybe 300, 400 years, 500 years, it's just going to be a problem in the future. It may be cheaper, but that's all. Thank you.
My name is Eric Abel. I'm also an instructor at the 513 training school. I'm going to keep mine short. That way you guys can have more time. Please don't cut these people off. I think they have a right to be heard. We are trained to do this work. Our past projects prove this. Most importantly, we are from here. We care about the community, and the community can count on the operating engineers. In closing, I would like to say, let the community take it from here because they live here.
Good evening, my name is AJ Moll. I've lived 15 years in North County. I've worked in North County, and now I live in Chesterfield. It's just a little bit down the road. But I still have a lot of friends here that live in North County. This is a regional issue. Things go wrong, an earthquake, a tornado, a flood. It's a regional issue that's going to affect my family. I'm so glad that you have proposals to fix this finally. Whether it be 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever option, I'm hoping and advocating option 7. But I saw it's going to take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. What do my friends do while you're excavating all this radioactive waste? You're going to expose them to even more. So please, do something for them. None of your options include a buyout. That's the most important thing besides cleaning this mess up.
Good evening. My name is Ann Cashville. I live in St. Anne, which is a neighboring community of Bridgeton. I've lived here all my life. We grew up in St. Anne. I grew up playing in Coldwater Creek. Nobody knew it was toxic. It's what the kids did back then. If anybody knew, believe me, we would have been within 10 miles of it. It's very unfortunate. I have a family of 7. I come from a family of 7 children. One has autoimmune disease. One has ovarian cancer, or had ovarian cancer. She's doing well now, thank God. My mom died of cancer. I'm fortunate enough to have 3 kinds of breast cancer and an autoimmune disease, which is Hashimoto's. The doctors were floored that they've never heard of the sisters that had breast cancer and ovarian cancer. They made us do genetic testing. It's not genetic. They were absolutely shocked that it's just unheard of that sisters would have breast and ovarian cancer and it not be genetic. And again, I want to repeat, it is not genetic. The tests were negative. One can only point to the toxins in this area. I do everything I can to improve my health. I'm growing a garden. I've done an organic garden for years. My sister is now so concerned. Why on earth would I be eating vegetables out of my garden in St. Anne? Am I improving my health or am I harming it? Now I don't know. I really want to get soil sample testing because I'm very, very concerned about what's going on in this area. I've heard from many, many people with health issues, and it's absolutely deplorable what's going on. My final closing is I find it extremely, extremely offensive that you come here and you propose alternative number 4 to us. You know damn right and well if it was your family, you'd be proposing alternative 7.
Hello, my name is Ashley Brunel, and I'll also speak a little faster because that's my style. So, we've heard a lot tonight from people that have been here for a long time, and I really want to commend everybody's stories tonight because I think these are very, very powerful testimonies of what is going on in this community and has been going on in this community for many, many years. As you can see, I'm a young person, I was born in the 80s. And so all of this predates me. It certainly predates my coming to St. Louis area. I came here in 2013. And so, as far as I'm concerned, I was fraudulently tricked into buying a home inside a Superfund because I live right by Coldwater Creek. And so, since I've had to go back in time and learn a lot, I'm going to use one of my favorite 80s movies. And you can call me Marty McFly for the rest of the day. And just like Marty McFly, he had quite a bit of information that he brought from the future and went backward in time and back to the future if you're following me. And so when he went back to the future with all this information, there was a few people he interacted with. He interacted with the bully, Biff, and he interacted with a crazy professor, right? So if you're wondering, EPA and other folks here, who you think you are in this story, it ain't the crazy professor. The bullies in this particular deal are the people that continue to have the kind of information and the will to do wrong and continue to do it. See, back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, y'all polluted Coldwater Creek and let the Coldwater Creek go everywhere. And then you took that soil and you brought it wrongly to the Westlake landfill. And now, when it's time to do right, Biff again just wants to pull Mom out the car. See, all these people are being left in the Westlake landfill area with no alternative. See, they have houses just like I bought my house that they can't get rid of. They have immune disorders and cancers that are making women bring up locks of hair tonight. Was that what I saw? And that was the last of her dog. See, I don't understand how you can actually see the kind of hurt that's going on and not actually propose the necessary solutions. And so, as quickly as I can skateboard on out of here with this time left, I hope that you will do not just 7, not just buyouts, but complete health for this community because we deserve not just our homes, not just our dignity, but our families intact. Thank you all for listening.
I heard about this. We moved here about a year ago, and I heard about this, and it's really just tragic, and I don't know why the EPA isn't doing more, because I know when I leave a mess in my house, my mom makes me clean it up all the way. She doesn't say clean it up, 70% of the way, and we just go and leave the other 30% there on the floor. She says clean it up all the way. So I don't know why when the EPA, it's not laundry on the floor, it's toxic radioactive waste in people's homes and community, they think they can clean it up 70% of the way and just leave the other 30% there to continue harming people.
tragic that they won't do more to help these people here, because this waste is just really, it's just really not right for this radioactive waste to be contaminating these people's homes and their families, and they need to get a buyout, and they need to get out, and we need to solve this problem for these people. Thank you.
If you see your names on the board, please come down the aisle into these chairs here, and we can continue to hear from them. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Baker. I moved into about 3 miles away, Maryland Heights, about 30 years ago. And 20 years ago, got worse. I'm almost 2 miles away in Bridgeton. And, but I would like to, I'm very grateful for the JIS moms and the other activists that have brought all this forward and force some action and help coordinate our activities. And I am just a dad, you know, family of 4, but JIS moms accept me as one of their own. And I'm very grateful for the EPA to be seeing some action that's not been happening, so courage to you guys, and we're grateful for that and for listening. So I did look through the record of decision. There's a lot to think about, but I think we're all in agreement here with what the community is looking for. I think it's important that we don't delay these efforts, that we don't have this 10 years of testing or anything. We had a decision 10 years ago which people didn't agree with, but now here we are 10 years later, so I'd like to see us move on. Children are especially sensitive to the effects of ionizing radiation, based on information from the World Health Organization. They're not even really sure what low level is safe. And the scary part is it doesn't show up for 15 to 30 years. And same for the adults. So people here that are perfectly healthy, you know, they've still ingested this stuff and they've been exposed. So that is dangerous. Permissible or safe levels may be safe for adults, but not necessarily for children. 70% removal leaves us with the other 30%. And that leaves us with, if you're doing the math, about 15,000 tons of radioactive waste. Now, if somebody had just dumped that, would we say that's below the level? You know, we're okay. 15,000 tons, probably not. 30% is about 15,000. But I'm happy to see the EPA on board, and because once the reactor decision becomes finalized, we'll get a little away from us and them, and it'll be us and us. Relocation is a must, but I'd like to see it based on more than just range for the dump. I'd like to see it based on some data. I'd also like the consideration for real estate values on homes that are not offered a buyout. I know I've put in tons of improvements in my house, and it is worth exactly what it was 20 years ago, which is not what you'd like to see. The other thing is transparency. I'd like to see some action or some level of affirmed transparency to remove bias or any appearance bias. Because where I work, we have to remove even the appearance of bias. And as I understand it, and I may have it wrong, we can clear it up later, but as I understand, EPA directs the responsible parties to perform specific testing at specific locations. Responsible parties then provide the results to the EPA periodically for review. This approach leaves us with many opportunities, if not for bias, at least the appearance of bias. So I would like the final plan to consider how this can be transparent and we can remove the appearance of bias or bias during the testing and removal process. The other question I'd like to see addressed in the outcome is funding. It seems like the federal government is the federal government best for expecting the responsible parties to clean up. How do the finances of a particular responsible party impact the cleanup? How does the financial impact of many decisions that will need to be made during the cleanup affect the outcome? And how can the potential bias by financial ability, how can that be managed? The other thing I'd like to see is, I understand EPA cannot test everywhere. They can't test my house. It's 1.8 miles. It's outside the area of concern, I suppose. But I'd like to provide guidance and come up with standardized tests so we don't have tests where they say there's nothing there, they test the B, say yes there is, that we can all agree on. And once that is, I'd like the EPA to have defined set of organizations that can do the qualified testing. And if people want to fund it on their own, here's the process, and if they find something, then it can be acknowledged. That's it. I'm sorry, that's all I had.
No, go ahead and wrap it up. That's fine.
Okay, no, that's all I had. Just to reduce the different test results at identical locations, I think that would be a big help, and it would be a lot more for safety. Thank you.
How are you guys doing this evening? My name is Jesse Koenig. I'm the St. Louis Rat Waste Action Team. I've been live streaming all night long. Everything that you have said is being heard by a very large amount of people, and it will continue to be shared even after we leave here tonight. But there's a lot of voices that aren't going to be heard because you guys have dragged your feet and kicked the can down the road even longer. I mean, decades upon decades. There are people here that aren't going to get a minute, 26, 25, 24, 23 seconds to speak to you because they're in the ground already with the radioactive waste. They've been buried, they're dead and gone. So for the next minute and 14, 13, 12 seconds, I would like to take a moment of silence to remember the people that aren't going to speak because you murdered them.
Hello, my name is Debbie. Everybody has pretty much already said my feelings. Just be one of the cool kids and do what's right. You guys are intelligent, smart men. You know what's right. Just do it. Thanks.
Oh, I'm right up there, D. Riley.
Hello, my name is Terry Carey. My name is Terry Carey. I live in the park here, the trailer park right across from the landfill. I was going to get a place out there because my girlfriend lived there. Everybody told me, the manager said, oh, it's safe, everything's okay, they paid us a while back, the smell's not that bad, come on, live here, and nobody would take me with my dog, so I went there. And believe it or not, I've been there since 2015, in the last year and a half, I have so much trouble breathing. And the doctor told me about it like 4 months ago, I think you have a touch of asthma. Really? I'm sick, and why? Because I live out here. I want the problem fixed, but I want to get out of here as soon as possible. And I don't mean tomorrow or next year, I mean within this year. I think we all should get bought out, and please fix that completely. And if you can't, close it all down. Thank you.
Rachel Goki, and I've been an environmental organizer since I was a baby. And what I want y'all to know is that you haven't seen anything yet. You haven't seen a thing. So there are, well, at the beginning of the meeting, there were maybe between 1,000 and 1,500 people here. And that's not even, like, we have just started. We have just started. And this is, so in 2 days it's going to be International Women's Day. And I'd like to thank Kay Dry, who is the grandmother of our movement. And I'd like to thank Dawn and Karen and all the moms that have worked so hard. And I want you to know that I don't live here. I don't live here, but I am a mom. And this is the biggest environmental catastrophe in the United States of America right now. And y'all need to take it seriously because we're going to take this all the way to the top. So, I'm not really scared of you, but I want you to know that we're here, we're not going anywhere, and we're taking this to a national level. Thank you.
My name is Angie Doran, and I live in Florissant, which is 4 or 5 miles from the landfill. I ask that you please notify the public by either media coverage and the NIPSL emergency test system to the zip codes that are within like 10 miles of the radioactive waste once the fire is within like 25 feet of the radiation, because, and then update daily how close the fire is in order for individuals and families to decide whether to self-evacuate. And also, please have a bring like a nuclear chemist, like that who was speaking before, and I didn't hear, but I did hear him speak on what would happen if the fire that's currently in the landfill, if it hit the radioactive waste that's in the landfill, what would happen? Would it explode? Would we get a nuclear reaction? Would it go up into the air and then filter down in Florissant, Hazelwood, and Christian, and everywhere else? So I would appreciate that information. Thank you.
On the screen here, would you please make your way over to the chairs here?
Hello, my name is Jessica Egler, and I moved to North County as a child in 1992. I lived here until 2007. I played in Baker Park. This solution, the proposed solution number 4, is unacceptable to me and should be unacceptable to anyone with any amount of common sense. This is a floodplain. The water table rises and falls rapidly and frequently, as is obvious to anyone who lived here in the flood zone 3 or either of the 2 floods that we've had in the past 2 years. We need to ensure that this nuclear waste does not leak out of the bottom of the landfill. There is no reason to leave it here in a metropolitan area. We need to move this waste to a licensed facility, out of state if possible, and away from populated areas. We need to remove as much as possible that is safe. We need to make sure that we don't stop arbitrarily at 16 feet. That is completely arbitrary and does not seem to be based in anything. And studies done by the landfill are a conflict of interest. We have no trust in them as a community. We need to be able to trust in our studies. We need to be able to trust in the science. We know that the landfill was dumped, the material was dumped in the landfill illegally, so we cannot base this on the history of the landfill. We need independent studies done. We need those done in conjunction with buyouts for the people within a 1 mile radius, and we need this done immediately. We need to not wait 15 years. We need to start this now. Thank you.
Ferguson. In 1979 to 1986, I worked here at Ozark Airlines. In 1983, I developed cancer. It wasn't good. 85, I had it again. They told me I wasn't going to live. Thank God I'm still here. But through the years, off and on, cancer still keeps popping up. I would like to see this 100% removed. I'm sure everybody else here would, with other people that are suffering. Cancer isn't fun. It's horrible. I would like my children and my grandchildren to live a full life as long as everybody else's children and grandchildren. It just has to be done. It has to be done. It's the most devastating thing when the doctor sits there and tells you you have cancer. You don't know if you're going to live or die. It's horrible. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, I went through another surgery. How many more do I have to have? Thank God I'm still living. That's all I can say. I vote for number 7. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kenny Phillips Sliver. Forgive me for the shirt that I'm wearing. At 2002, my youngest son, was 17 years old, and he's diagnosed with glioblastoma. Glioblastoma multiforme. And I said, why? It's my traveling buddy. I think I got the answer here tonight. So many others have shared their losses and their pain. Thank you for coming and giving such a great presentation and giving us so many choices. But I think for me, I had no idea about this meeting until my daughter, Sheila, invited me to it, told me about it, and shared a post on Facebook. But this is like an instrument prayer. I'm sorry, that's all I'm sorry.
Hey, can anyone who sees their name there, please up?
Well, my name is Lisa Rigg, and I have grown up around the airport area all my life. Every town in this town, around that town, I and all these people here, everybody here, is involved with this Westlake landfill no matter where you live. I have moved from the terrace and rest after being so sick and partial lung renewed. Watching everybody I loved as friends that turned into family die, holding their hand on hospice. I mean, I met them in 2007, and I moved out of here 3 years ago to St. Charles to find out that it's not safe. So now I moved 2 hours and 15 minutes away, and I want to know, when I moved my mobile home from Terrace and Rest to St. Charles, am I carrying all that nuclear waste and red, this, that, toxins there? When I take myself into other stores and I sell things at the rummage sales and things, and I sell it and I tap this nuclear waste to other people, is it all the way moving out of nowhere? Did I take it where I moved to 2 hours and 15 minutes away? I need that question to be answered because I threw away almost everything I own. I couldn't sell my mobile home. I sold it to a friend of mine under the conditions that when I have to come here to all my doctors that I go see, which is like every month I'm here from Newton, Illinois, seeing 2 and 3 doctors every month. You know, and I've already had a lung taken out because of nodules, and oh, we don't know. Now I got nodules on my vocal parts. What does my doctor say they look like? Oh, it's not cancer. It looks like cauliflower and it's spooky. They can't even diagnose my illness. That's really weird. You know, now what do? I walk around and go, do I want to go to the doctor? Or do I want to live happily ever after? So I chose to move 2 fight, but I ain't giving up this fight with all these people on the mountain. We need your support. Help us help you. We stood across for all day, one day, Donna was there, there was Kim, Megan and Kim. There was a lot of people standing with their signs everywhere, you know, people honking. Nobody told any of the people from the mobile home park that when they were pulling over, they were going, what are you guys doing? Well, we're handing out flyers because there's nuclear waste here. You're being exposed to a lot of things. We never was told by management. I never was told when I moved in there either. So luckily, I chose to be in huge debt, which debt money is not the issue, because I want to live. I'm 53 years old. I want to live a little bit longer, you know? And these kids that are dying, and they're sick, and I mean, I've held babies all night long. At 2 years old, they can't breathe. I know what they're going through. And to put the masks on and try to get them to breathe is the most devastating thing that you can do with a child. I mean, they're not even my kids. But I did hospice at the mobile home park, and you can come talk to me anytime about every person. I have their names, their phone numbers, what they died from, because I knew them all. I cut their grass, I took them to doctors, I cleaned their house, and I was already sick, but they were sicker at that time. And now I'm right behind them, and it's not going to stop here at 53. It's not going to stop at 23 or 3, you know. And I got a lot wrong with me, but there's a lot of other people that need to be relocated immediately. Immediately yesterday, last year, 10 years ago.
And number 7.
On the record, who does that? Hi, my name is Monty Richter. I lived in this community. I grew up in Maryland Heights. I am a teacher. I currently work in this community. When I got older, I moved to West, Creek, and where all the contamination is. When the EPA says preferred cleanup, the alternative that they're referring to, I don't know what it is. When the EPA says their preferred cleanup, that's their preferred cleanup. It's not the community's preferred cleanup. We've made it eminently clear tonight. Everybody wants 7. If we would have stopped in 2008, we would have got a cap, but we didn't stop. You know why? And I say we, not very fairly, advocates in the area, moms, and all the other people that worked really, really hard. If you would have stopped in 2008, we wouldn't be here right now. And I want to give you an applause for all that you've done. Things to happen in the future. But no, people persevere. And now we're here with this preferred alternative 4, which is not a preferred alternative 4. It's EPA's preferred alternative 4. But again, we are going to continue to push. We are not stopping here. We want 7, and we want 7 now. And not only do we want 7 now, but we want more than 7. There are many companies that have gained money from this, and now it's time for those companies to pay. We want clarification of the acceptable risks from the EPA, and we would like the definition to be publicly shared with the community. What is the definition of acceptable risks? We would like full cleanup, no partial. We would like all the contamination removed. We want the people in imminent danger to be removed immediately and brought out properly. If that means 1 mile or 3 miles, we want these people to be safe. We want testing of a minimum of 3-mile radius of homes, schools, and businesses. 3 miles, minimum. We need the fire to be stopped, or we need the subsurface smoldering event, as the EPA likes to call it, to be stopped. We want testing paid for and available for long-term, low-dose people that have been exposed. This hasn't been talked about yet this evening. There are many people in this room that have had long-term, low-dose exposure, and there's been no solution discussed on how to help them. would like a remedy treatment like chelation or better medical options that I'm unaware of to extract the uranium, the thorium, and the radium along with other toxins that may have been obtained through illegal dumping and the negligence of our government. We'd like this to be implemented to people with low-dose long-term exposure. Not only do we want the testing and the treatment, we want it to be paid for by the EPA. We want it to be available for anybody who has been affected or believes that they may have been affected, whether they live in this area or not. We have been poisoned for too long, and it's time for it to stop. We would like further testing outside of the fence, the landfill. We'd like to be extended to 3-mile radius beyond once the truth continues to unravel. Because I'm pretty sure after we test 3 miles, we're going to find that we need to go 6. And after we go 6, we need to go 10. And we're going to keep going, and that's what we need to do, and that's what EPA needs to do. And yeah, it's going to cost a pretty penny, but guess what? It needs to be done. We want very well, and we want the EPA to help ensure that this environment and the environments of the surrounding areas that this environment can impact upon natural disaster be cleaned up. Because it's not just this little area, it's not just Bridgeton, it's not just St. Anne, it's not just Hazelwood. It is all of the large surrounding areas. So if you live in Chesterfield, you're not safe. If you live in St. Peters, you're not safe. It is everywhere. It is huge, and it's much bigger than any of us know. We want this done faster than 18 years. I think 5 sounds acceptable to me. We want alternative 7, and we want more. This is a government mistake. Fix it, and fix it in a timely manner.
My name is Edith Hoffman, and I came from the mobile home park that Lisa Briggs came from. I ended up with Parkinson's, and I got it after I moved there. So I've had it for like 25 years now. I lost my husband. I wasn't able to sell my home. I had to give it away to the homeless because no one would buy it because it was on the news that property, you know, was bad. So no, I could not get anybody to buy my home. I had to give it away. But I was sitting back there and I was watching both of your faces, and I know that you care. I feel that you care. I've been watching both of you. I know that you care.
The first thing I would like to say is, as an individual and as a representative of the EPA, fuck you for not disclosing the underground landfill fire that is currently burning at the start of it. A lot of information is still a lie, and as everyone has told you tonight, we're getting tired of that. It needs to stop. It needs to stop it. Okay. Next. I'm pretty sure that the radioactive waste that is the furthest underground is also the closest to the water table. So why we'd only dig 16 feet down does not make a lot of sense in terms of preventing what is probably the most likely and potentially the worst case scenario for contamination. That's potentially contaminating not only the local groundwater, not only the Missouri River, but also the Mississippi River. So we're talking probably a large portion of the inhabited areas in the United States being exposed to radioactive waste. That's in no way or shape or form acceptable. Secondly, you are the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Public Services continues to spread misinformation about the nature of the problem. They continue to not be held accountable for a lot of the death and misfortune that has been suffered because of their actions and because of their policies regarding the matter. And as the Environmental Protection Agency, you need to start holding them legally to task for the problems and misfortunes they have caused. Why people are not receiving benefits regarding medical concerns, why people are not being bought out of homes that are in the vicinity when Republic Services is largely responsible for the problems we're facing now is beyond my imagination. That is all, and everyone buy a Geiger counter because I don't know if these people are going to be actually testing anyone's property for waste. So.
My name is Rebecca Wright, and I live in St. Louis, and I'm a member of the Coalition for the Environment. And also, I've worked with KPI over the years. I've seen her go to meeting after meeting, imploring first the Army Corps of Engineers, the Energy Department, to clean up these wastes. I've seen politicians stonewall because they don't want this known, and they didn't want to disturb their community. And now I see all these people that have suffered and are dying because of the neglect. The waste that's in the radioactive waste that's in the state landfill was dumped there illegally. And the jurisdiction was transferred from the Energy Department and the Army Corps of Engineers to the EPA because nobody else wanted to deal with it. And now look what it's done. The EPA has taken this long to deal with it, and it's affected so many more people. And it needs to be cleaned up now. It needs to be cleaned up to the highest standard. No cap is going to prevent the radioactive waste, the radon from escaping, and for the deep waste to be in the groundwater and affect many more lives. And so I urge you to clean up to level 7 or better and free these people and free the future generations from this horrible scourge. Thank you.
Is there anyone else signed up?
Okay, so any of you that see your names on the screen then, please come to this little area here. Do your comments, thank you. We are, by the way, at 9 o'clock. I know we promised you all that we would have a meeting from 6 to 9. We are going to go until we hear all of the registered.
Hi, my name is Lisa Shirley. I'm from St. Charles. So I just recently learned about this, and as I've researched, I look at how long our community has been told that there's nothing to worry about, that this is safe. And after persistence from our community, we finally found out, and the EPA's finally admitted that maybe there is something we need to worry about. It's just, how long did it take for we to finally admit that these dangers exist for our community? The lack of testing, research, and urgency from the EPA has been alarming, and it's loss of confidence and trust of our community, clearly, from the turnout tonight, and from everyone who's spoken, all the testimonies, everything that I've shown online, people speaking out. We don't trust that we are in your best interest. Your lack of due diligence, given in the many examples for folks tonight, makes it seem as if you're serving another interest besides us. Alternative 4 is not the solution that will best reduce risk to our community in case of a natural disaster, and that's what we deserve. We didn't ask for this, and we shouldn't be expected to accept any solution that doesn't guarantee the best, our best safety. There is no amount of risk that's acceptable. I'm not worth the risk, my family isn't worth the risk, and our community isn't worth the risk. That is essentially what you're saying with Alternative 4, that we are worth it. And that's not the most that you can do. Now's your chance to do what you're here for and to serve not just only our interests, nothing else. Show us that you can be trusted to do the right thing. I ask for reconsideration of Alternative 7.
My name is Maurice Gaten, and I live in Sand. It takes take a word from the movie Jaws, you guys are going to need a bigger boat. Plain and simple. We are not addressing the whole issue here. You're not mentioning Coldwater Creek. You're not mentioning a pipeline that takes 300,000 gallons of leachate that we don't even know if it's radioactive or not. Under St. Charles Rock Road, through Charlotte, through St. Anne, through St. John, to I-170 to go into a sewage treatment plant. And then where does it go from there? If I remember right, the science project, doesn't take a scientist to know this, but when it rains, it falls on the ground, it evaporates, and it goes back up into the air. It comes back down, we're drinking it again. It's processed. How are we taking radioactivity out of the water? How are we getting it? How are we testing it? How are we doing any of that? The other thing is, I'm 52 years old. I fought my ass off to get everything I got. I was from a single parent family. I raised myself. I've got 2 beautiful daughters, and it kills me to think that I'm 52 years old. This stuff had a 40-year head start. If anybody in this room saw a murder, they wouldn't wait 40 freaking years to report it or do anything about it. Your office is in Lenexa, Kansas, the most pristine place I've ever lived. Why in the hell would I move to a cesspool with nuclear waste? Why would I raise a family here? Why would I buy a house here? Why would I do that if I knew all that? Somebody knew. People glowed in the dark. The snow doesn't stick. Clean it up. A cap is not the answer. Get this crap out of here. Fix this community. It goes everywhere. It's not just St. Anne. It's not just Bridgeton. It goes all the way downtown. St. Louis as a whole is a cesspool. It's everywhere, and it had a 40-year head start. And the bright, shiny blue trucks of Republic Service goes down everybody's street in this room. Everybody's house. They park the trucks at the landfill still. Why isn't anybody stopping them from doing that? Why are we required to use Republic Services? Why is the money flowing from Republic Services to politicians in every damn city? Why are they all breathing the bones of every politician in every goddamn city in this metropolitan area? That's right, yeah. We can't fire Republic Services. Why? They're killing us. They're killing us all.
My name is Ariel Reichert. I live in Arnold, Missouri. That's about 28 miles from here. And we get water from Public Water District number 1 for Jefferson County. And in their water test results, they also have an area which specifically says, addresses the fact that there are certain contaminations in their water, including nuclear material. That's 28 miles from here. Now, when this fire ends up getting to the contamination, because last time I heard it was really close, like within, thank you, and that was about 7 months ago. So I don't know if anyone has an updated statistic for what that is now, but if you don't have that, you should really work on that, because it would be a shame if y'all finally decide to work on something and we're out of time, because we're just that close to the contamination. And on top of that, taking a side back, I am also of a organization that is a different political party, and putting our differences aside, I'm trying to talk to you guys as individuals, because I've seen the way all of you are reacting to the way that people are talking to you. And I want to talk to you about this from an ethical standpoint. When this fire ends up breaking out, when anything ends up happening, because we aren't prepared for it, we haven't been working on it for years. We're sending
Well, a message most Americans have known right now, not to trust the government, because they aren't really here for us. They're here for like whatever monetary gain they can get from corporations like Republicans and lobbyists. Like, I understand that. My thing is, can you guys like please just get your shit together, because we don't have that much time now. And as people who like should care about millions of lives affected by what happens when this contamination comes out. We're talking about downstream Missouri River affecting states, millions of people. This will be seen like, what did you guys say, 9,000 years after these contaminations are done and like finally no longer a threat to humankind. They're hopefully not going to be able to remember civilizations, but when they do, they're going to remember America fucked us all over for this entire time. Or like lobbyists or none of that shit, but you care enough about America, like remember you're fucking us all over, okay? But again, I'm not addressing this to you as like people. This is a bigger part of the problem. This is like capitalism, right? Okay? So anyway, that's what I got.
Number 81.
My name is Myron Clemens. It's good to see you, Mr. Kelly. Thank you. I have reason for cautious optimism that we actually will get this waste cleaned up. I sure hope so. There's two things I want to talk about is institutional memory, which the EPA sometimes doesn't have. And neither do the other federal agencies that are in charge of this waste. How it moved from one bit of responsibility to someone else is horrible. And it also gives us concern about the future. You know, will the EPA exist in 10 years? We don't know. Will public service exist in 5 years? We don't know. So we do have to be conservative and cautious about decisions we make now and into the future. I wrote about these wastes for the Riverfront Times in 1982. And that means nothing. The institutional memory is part of it, and it's multiple pathways of exposure. My father was exposed to this waste next to the slab site. We all have heard this evening and talked to people who've done things like lived next to Coldwater Creek or had someone who worked at one of these sites, and then they moved into this neighborhood. Multiple pathways of exposure, and I don't think that's been considered in the record of decision. And also, we're traumatized. And I'm not talking about post-traumatic stress syndrome. This is continual stress. And it should be part of your decision making. So the decision I hope you make, and I want you to think about this. We talked about 9,000 years, right? And I like to think about the data and the science and be conservative about it. But we have uranium-234, uranium-235, and uranium-238. There is no place in the U.S. that has uranium-235 other than these sites, these Manhattan Project sites. It doesn't exist. There is no background level of it. It's not in Missouri. It's how we know the thumbprint is on it, how we can track it from Coldwater Creek slab site to Laddie Avenue to here to people's houses. So finally, I just got this week, although it was published in it's a forensic microanalysis of Manhattan Project legacy radioactive waste in St. Louis, Missouri. Our good friend Robert Alvarez, who's a well-known nuclear physicist, found what? Manhattan Project waste with the thumbprint in people's houses. Thorium and uranium in people's houses near the site. It's the truth, it's factual, it's scientific, we know it. We have anecdotal information, these horrible stories from my own father and our family to people in this room, anecdotal stories. You don't get a little flag that pops up that says your cancer came from this. But you know how we first found these wastes? Somebody mentioned it earlier about Weldon Springs. It was a pediatrician who came forward about Weldon Springs because he found a leukemia hotspot. The neighboring priest there found leukemia in the kids around the Weldon Springs site. That's how we first heard about it at all. And then, of course, the atomic workers. Denise Brock was here this evening. The people who worked for Mallinckrodt. The government took care of their families eventually. The government should do the right thing here. We didn't generate these wastes. Public Services didn't generate them. Maybe revisit the ROD and kick in 1/4 of it and do the right thing and do number 7. Thank you.
Not right.
Oh, there's my name.
See, you just been anyone whose name is on the screen, could you please come up here? As I say, we are going to continue. We are going over our 9 o'clock hour, but we'll continue. So, anyone's name up there?
Hello, thank you, John, for taking the time to listen to everyone this evening. My name is Jennifer Scott-Burwell. I'm representing my family, the Scott family from Spanish Village. We were the first to live. As a former, and I do live in Lake St. Louis house, as a former resident of Spanish Village, who were among the first neighbors to live in the subdivision as children, and resided at this location for over a decade off of Landfill Court, I agree that relocating the residents who currently reside in Spanish Village and surrounding neighborhoods that are within the mile range should be relocated immediately. It is not a coincidence that many families who reside in Spanish Village and the mobile home park became ill, sick, or even died of cancer because of a bizarre chance. All of my siblings suffer from various types of autoimmune disease, and several of our family members had cancer-related illnesses. Sadly, our mother died from small cell carcinoma. Growing up, I recall several residents who died of cancers. Our own illnesses started hitting while we resided in Spanish Village in the 70s and the 80s, and continue to this day. This is an urgent matter due to the past and present evidence of long-term related autoimmune illnesses, disabilities, and cancer-related deaths, and diseases that are within a mile of the West Lake Landfill. I do not want to see any other families suffer from toxins related to the landfill. I knew when all my siblings became ill that the landfill was a plausible, reasonable, and logical connection. As children, before the area was developed with businesses, we played for hours in the woods, creeks, even at times drank from them on hot summer days. After researching countless documents on the initial handling of the toxic materials and lack of state regulations, when it was first transported and placed at the West Lake Landfill, and there is supporting and convincing evidence of environmental contaminants. My personal research and inquiry started over 14 years ago. First, researching autoimmune diseases and seeking logical and reasonable answers as to why all my siblings, along with myself, were suffering from different afflictions of autoimmune diseases. These residents, especially their children, are developing and may have children of their own one day. Many of my siblings' children, along with myself, have had children with various types of disabilities, mental disabilities, autism, Tourette's syndrome, severe speech delays and impediments, and ADHD, just to name a few. One must logically question the environment and infer what logical toxins and contaminants are within a range of reaching residents, and that would be the West Lake Landfill. I do not want to see any other family like ours suffer in their life with uncontrollable fatigue and constant management of an autoimmune disorder or cancer. In addition, To watch a loved one suffer and die of cancer cannot be formed into words. We supported our brother during stage 4 lymphoma cancer and bone cancer, and he must live with the aftermath of the debilitating effects of those diseases. We lost our mother to cancer, and we miss her dearly. In conclusion, the Westlake Landfill and the state of Missouri has a responsibility to the residents who seek to live in an environmentally safe community and should immediately relocate these families. As the evidence of past and present residents and their related illnesses have been an ongoing health hazard environmental epidemic in this location for decades and continues to this day, these residents need to be moved first. Then removal of the toxic waste must take place. We should not do what they did in New Orleans for and happen. The decision to move this toxic Manhattan Project waste to our state, I'm almost finished, just a little bit. Please, allow a few more people. Okay, and it's just, okay. To move the waste to our state of Missouri was carelessly decided and handled by elected officials. And we cannot change the past decisions of others, but you all can make the final decision to right the wrongs and mistakes that took place and put an end to this environmental nightmare for these residents. Give them the peace and security to raise their families in a safe environment, free of harmful toxins lurking in their backyards and homes. My siblings and I, who lived in Spanish Village, will always have fond memories of playing and running the woods, creeks, and eating wild blackberries as children, fighting imaginary monsters and villains, and saving ourselves, friends, and homes from them. Who would have thought that one of those monsters really did exist, but in a form of an unseen toxin? It is time to get rid of the toxic monster lurking near the neighborhoods once and for all. It's time to right the wrong.
I should say. And remember, you can submit as much as you want to EPA to April 23rd. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Albert. I've talked to you before. I previously acquainted you with some things that surprised you. All were present in the entire room. In fact, mostly speaking to members of my community who have suffered from this waste as much as I have. I have seen what the waste looked like when it was taken out of St. Louis. I've seen the yellow cake at Camden, Colorado, where it says open to wind and rain. I have personally seen this. It was here. It contaminated this entire area before it was taken to Colorado, where it is still treated as recklessly as it was treated here once, when it leaked through Sangamon into the creek, Coldwater Creek, which, by the way, I picnicked by as a child. I am the monster that the EPA has created. I have third-generation exposure to nuclear waste. That is roughly the same timeline as exposure from the actual Manhattan Project bombs themselves. I beg you to consider my perspective. When I discovered the reason for my mother's chronic illnesses and why I did not have the most normal childhood with an ailing mother, when I discovered why my mother had suffered and almost died many times in front of my eyes as a small child, I could not believe the ways that my government had failed us. I still cannot believe the amount of death in my grandparents, my mother's neighborhood. On one street, every house has had someone with Parkinson's. My grandfather still suffers. I just want you to consider that this waste will continue that legacy here in Bridgeton, and it will not stop until every last bit of it has been safely disposed of. It is in the water table. It will continue to contaminate the alluvial film. It will continue to leak toward the river if it has not done so already. entire region at some point will become contaminated beyond belief. This is Fukushima. This is Chernobyl. Thank you.
Right, so in the same way that residents here have had no choice for decades about this waste being dumped here, about having to raise their kids here, having to suffer here, having to bury people here, all the time being either too unaware of the rim or too powerless to do anything about it, this community is now turning the tables. See, you have the impression that you have a choice among these numerous solutions you've proposed. As if you get to choose. An entity that has done nothing for decades does not get to choose. This community has chosen. We've chosen option 7. And more. Do you hear us? Scott Cannon, sorry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Logan Smith. I used to be the Executive Director of Missouri Coalition for the Environment. And before that, I had the fortitude to show up in the city and know it was a problem and still live here. And my first experience with this particular mess was at a public hearing about Laddie Avenue, Coldwater Creek, and I kept asking the question, what are you going to do if you leave the waste there and it's radioactive and it's under the streets? What are you going to do when they come to repave the streets? I'm that chick, and I'm on the record 20 years ago, and I'm still here. And I want you to know that people are dying, and people have died, and we are all dying. Every day we get up and we are dying. And how you are dying doesn't matter, it's how you live that matters. And we are going to live to see this clean. This is the last war that we have ever fought in World War II, and we are winning this one too. And that's all I've got to say.
Hi, my name is Dawn DeBlaise-Garin, and I'm a public relations firm owner. And in my business, this would be a public relations nightmare. I wouldn't be able to run my business this way, quite frankly, or I would be out of business. And just to tell you a little bit about my story, I was born in 1966, and I lived from 1966 to 1992 in Florissant, Missouri, next to Coldwater Creek. And in December 1991, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and I've been chronically ill since 1991. It doesn't stand a chance of getting any better. It may get worse. It may stay the same. I don't know. But I live every day with this chronic illness. And living next to Coldwater Creek, there was no signs or anything to let us know that there was any danger whatsoever. So our government let us down, and we had no knowledge. All the kids played in the creek. We ate crawfish from the creek. We played, we swam in it. We didn't know. And so we had no knowledge. We went to Hazelwood Cornlake Fields where my brother played baseball. I've been told that it's blowing in the dust there. We spent years going and watching baseball games. I also swam at Bangor Park Pool at the age of 9 from 1975 to 77 for 3 years. And every swimmer I swam for 2 hours every morning in the summertime. I was an Olympic hopeful. And adjacent to that, there was an uncovered storage facility for many years. I wonder how much of that I inhaled while I was practicing 2 hours every morning. And then I would go and sunbathe at the pool. St. Ferdinand Park is another park that I would go, and the waste was mishandled there as well. So you see, it was all around me. We would also go and we would sit at the at the airport, we would watch the planes come in. How much of it was blowing around us while we would watch the airplanes come in at the airport? I will never know. Also, the untold story about this is that my mother passed away in 2012. Her thyroid was taken out before when I was a young girl, still in elementary school and high school. She passed away in 2012 from lung cancer. And there was no genetic history in our family. She was very healthy. She was quite the church lady. And she never smoked a day in her life. It seems to me that we had a lot of the same paths, and she is probably a casualty of all of this dating back to the 1940s. I tell you our story so that it is not falling on deaf ears. Option number 7. Thank you.
Okay, well, listen, I thank you all. We thank you all for being here. I think we said it probably more times than we want to hear, but the EPA is accepting comments through April 23rd. I would certainly encourage every one of you to send in something on this. And again, we appreciate you being here and you being out there.
One more thing. The Just Moms STL meeting is next Thursday night, March 15th. We will debrief, we will talk, we will gather, strategize, and have a call to action. So commit those meetings at John Calvin Presbyterian Church, 6:30, right up here at Natural Bridge in St. Charles River. The old Circuit City. Thank you.